At dinner, my son's wife threw hot soup in my face and smiled, saying, "That is exactly what you deserve." I looked at my son, waiting for him to defend me, but he just sighed and said, "She is right, Dad. You need to learn your place." I said nothing. I just stood up, wiped the burning liquid from my eyes, and walked out the front door into the cold night. But before I left the driveway, I made one quick phone call that would turn their entire world into a living nightmare. What happened next, they will never forget. My name is Otis King, and I am 72 years old. For the last 5 years, I have played a role. I let my son Jamal and his wife Brittany believe I was a broke retired truck driver who lost everything in a bad investment. I let them believe I had nowhere else to go. I let them treat me like a burden in the very house that my money paid for. You see, I wanted to know if they loved me or for the empire I built from the dirt up. Tonight, I got my answer, and it burned worse than the scalding pumpkin soup dripping down my shirt. If you have ever been disrespected by the people you sacrificed everything for, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from, because I want to know how far my story travels. The evening started like any other Tuesday in the sprawling colonial house in Atlanta. The dining room was cold, despite the heating being on. It was always cold when Brittany was in the room. She sat at the head of the table, a spot I used to sit in before I handed the keys to Jamal. She was wearing a vintage Chanel dress she bought with the supplementary credit card I secretly pay off every month. Jamal sat to her right, scrolling on his phone, barely acknowledging my existence. I sat at the far end of the table, staring at the bowl of pumpkin soup the housekeeper had placed in front of me. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Brittany had been in a foul mood all week because I refused to sign over the deed to my old cabin in the mountains. She wanted to sell it to fund a trip to the Maldives. I told her no. That cabin was the first property I ever bought when I was hauling gravel across state lines for 12 hours a day. It meant something to me. To her, it was just a pile of cash rotting in the woods. The silence was broken only by the clinking of silver spoons against porcelain. I took a sip of the soup. It was scorching hot and incredibly salty. I put the spoon down gently and cleared my throat. "I think the chef might have slipped with the salt tonight," I said quietly. It was not a complaint, just an observation. I did not raise my voice. I did not look for a fight. I just wanted to make conversation. Brittany stopped eating. She slowly lowered her spoon and looked at me with eyes that looked like blue ice. "Excuse me," she asked, her voice dangerously low. "I just said the soup is a bit salty, Brittany, that is all," I replied, reaching for my water glass. She let out a sharp, cruel laugh. "You have some nerve, old man. You sit there eating food you did not pay for, in a house you do not maintain, wearing clothes my husband bought you, and you have the audacity to critique the menu." I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. Jamal did not look up from his phone. He just kept scrolling like he was deaf. "I bought the groceries this week, Brittany," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I used my pension check." "Your pension check," she scoffed. "That check barely covers the gas for the Range Rover." "You are a parasite, Otis, a leech. You suck the life out of this family, and I am sick of it." I looked at Jamal. "Son, are you going to let her talk to your father like that?" Jamal finally looked up. He looked tired. He looked weak. He looked at his wife, then he looked at me, and I saw the moment his spine dissolved. "Mom is gone." "Dad," Jamal said, his voice devoid of any real conviction. "Brittany is the lady of the house now. If she says the soup is fine, then the soup is fine. Just eat it and stop complaining. You are embarrassing me." Embarrassing him. I built King Transport from a single rusted truck into a logistics empire that covers the entire East Coast. I put him through private school. I paid for his college. I bought him his first suit. And now I was embarrassing him because his wife had a temper. "I am not hungry," I said, pushing the bowl away. "I think I will go to my room." "No, you do not," Brittany snapped, standing up. Her face was flushed with rage. "You do not get to walk away when I am speaking to you. You do not get to disrespect me in my own dining room." "This is not your dining room," I said quietly. It was the first time in 5 years I had let the mask slip. Just a fraction. That was the trigger. Brittany grabbed the bowl of soup. It was a heavy ceramic bowl filled to the brim with thick orange liquid that was still steaming. In one fluid motion, she hurled it across the table. It happened in slow motion, and yet I could not move fast enough. The hot liquid splashed across my face, my neck, and my chest. The pain was immediate and blinding. It felt like liquid fire searing my skin. I gasped, bringing my hands up to my face, trying to wipe the burning sludge away from my eyes. The shock was almost worse than the pain. I heard the bowl shatter against the wall behind me. "That is what you deserve," Brittany shrieked. "Maybe that will teach you some respect." I stood there, blinding pain radiating across my face, my shirt soaked and ruined. I waited. I waited for my son to jump up. I waited for him to rush to me to grab a napkin to shout at his wife. I waited for the boy I raised to show up. But Jamal did not move toward me. He moved toward her. "Baby, calm down," he said soothingly, reaching for Brittany's hand. "You are going to ruin your dress. He is not worth it." He looked at me, wiping the soup from my eyes, blinking through the sting. "Look what you made her do," Dad, Jamal said, shaking his head in disgust. "Why do you always have to push her? You know she is under a lot of stress." My heart, which I thought had turned to stone years ago, finally shattered. It was a clean break. The hope I had been holding on to, the hope that my son was just misguided, that he would eventually find his way back to being a man, it died right there in that dining room amidst the smell of pumpkin and expensive perfume. I took a napkin from the table and wiped my face. My skin was red and throbbing. I did not shout. I did not curse. I felt a cold calm wash over me, a sensation I had not felt since my days negotiating with union busters in the 80s. I looked at Jamal. I looked him dead in the eye. "You chose her," I said. My voice was rough but clear. "You stood there and watched her burn your father, and you worried about her dress." Jamal rolled his eyes. "Oh, spare me the drama, Dad. You are fine. It is just soup. Go wash it off, and do not expect us to take you to the doctor. We are not spending any more money on your hypochondria." I looked at Brittany. She was smiling. It was a small, satisfied smile. She thought she had won. She thought she had broken the old man. I nodded slowly. "I understand," I said. I turned and walked toward the front door. "Where do you think you are going?" Jamal called out. "You better not be going to the neighbors to cry about this. I swear if you embarrass us, I will lock you out for the night." I did not answer. I did not look back. I opened the heavy oak front door and stepped out into the night. The air was crisp and cold, biting against my wet skin, but it felt like freedom. I did not have my coat, I did not have my wallet, but I had my phone in my pocket, and I had a memory that was long and sharp. I walked down the long driveway, my boots crunching on the gravel. I walked until I was out of sight of the house. I stopped under the street lamp at the corner. My face was still burning, but my mind was ice cold. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the decision I had just made. I scrolled through my contacts, past Jamal, past the house line, until I found the number I needed. It was a number I had not called in 5 years. It rang once. Mr. King, a deep professional voice, answered immediately. "We have not heard from you in a long time. Is everything all right?" It was Henderson, my personal attorney and the executor of the King Family Trust. He was the only man who knew the full extent of my assets and the only man who knew exactly where I had been hiding. "No, Henderson," I said, looking back at the house glowing on the hill. "Everything is not all right. I need you to execute Protocol Omega." There was a pause on the other end of the line. A heavy silence. Henderson knew what that meant. We had drafted Protocol Omega 5 years ago as a nuclear option, a contingency plan, in case my worst fears about my family came true. It was a scorched earth policy. "Are you certain?" Sir Henderson asked, his voice losing its professional detachment for a second. "Once we start this, there is no going back. The assets will be frozen. The notifications will be sent. The eviction process begins immediately. It will be total war." I touched my cheek where the skin was blistering. I thought about the smile on Brittany's face. I thought about Jamal worrying about a dress while his father burned. "I am certain," I said. "Cut them off, Henderson. Cut everything off. Cancel the supplementary cards, freeze the bank accounts, and send the security team to the house. I want them out." "Understood," Sir Henderson said. "Where are you?" "I will send a car for you." "I am on the corner of Oak and Pine," I said. "The car will be there in 10 minutes, Henderson said. "And, sir, welcome back." I hung up the phone. I stood under the streetlight, shivering in the cold, waiting for the limousine that would take me back to my real life. I looked at the house one last time. I saw the silhouette of my son in the window. He had no idea that the roof over his head, the car in his garage, and the clothes on his back were all about to disappear. He thought he was the king of the castle. He forgot that the castle belonged to the king, and the king had just returned. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jamal. Do not bother coming back tonight. I locked the deadbolt. You can sleep in the shed if you want. Maybe that will teach you some manners." I read the text and a dry, humorless laugh escaped my lips. He was locking the deadbolt. He did not know that I was the one holding the master key to his entire existence. I deleted the message. I did not need to reply. My response was coming in the form of a fleet of lawyers and a security detail that would make the Secret Service look relaxed. Headlights swept across the pavement. A sleek black town car pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, a massive man in a dark suit. He opened the back door for me. "Mr. King," he said, nodding respectfully. I climbed into the warm leather interior. The smell of expensive leather and peace filled my nose. "To the penthouse," I said. The driver nodded and we pulled away into the night, leaving the suburbs behind. As we drove, I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. The physical pain was still there, but the emotional burden, the weight of 5 years of pretending, of hoping, of being disappointed, it was gone. I was Otis King. I was a man who had built a $20 million empire with my bare hands. I had let them treat me like a dog, but the dog days were over. Tomorrow morning, when Brittany tried to buy her morning latte with my money, she was going to get a very rude awakening. And when Jamal tried to start the car that I legally owned, he was going to find out just how cold it is to walk in his father's shoes. The war had begun, and they had no ammunition. The limousine glided to a stop, not at the front entrance of the Grand Marquis Hotel, but at a discreet service bay in the back used only for heads of state and people who owned the building. I stepped out, and the cold night air bit at the raw skin on my cheek, but I barely felt it. The adrenaline was pumping through my veins like jet fuel. A young man in a pristine uniform was waiting by the door. He did not look at my soup-stained shirt or my wild eyes. He looked at my face with recognition and respect. "Welcome back, Chairman King," he said, holding the door open. "We have prepared the penthouse just as you like it." Chairman King. I had not heard that name in 5 years. For the last 1,800 days, I had just been Otis the broke old man sleeping in the guest room. Otis the burden. Otis the failure. Hearing my title again felt like putting on a suit of armor. I nodded at the young man and swept past him into the private elevator. I watched the numbers climb higher and higher, leaving the street level, leaving the noise, leaving the humiliation far below. When the doors opened directly into the penthouse, the silence was the first thing that hit me. It was a heavy, expensive silence. The floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Atlanta skyline, a city I had helped build with my own logistics network. I walked straight to the master bathroom. The lighting was harsh and unforgiving. I looked in the mirror. My face was a map of betrayal. The skin on my left cheek and neck was angry and blistering red where the pumpkin soup had scalded me. My shirt was ruined, stained with orange grease. I looked like a madman. I turned on the tap, letting the cold water run. As I splashed the water onto my face, trying to cool the fire on my skin, my mind drifted back 40 years. I was not always Chairman King. I started in a cab of a second-hand Peterbilt truck, hauling lumber from Georgia to Maine. I smelled like diesel and sweat for 20 years. I missed birthdays. I missed anniversaries. I ate cold sandwiches at gas stations at 3 in the morning just to save an extra $1 to buy a second truck. Then a third. Then a fleet. I built King Transport from the asphalt up. I broke my back so my son Jamal would never have to lift anything heavier than a pen. And that was my mistake. I made it too easy. 5 years ago, when I turned 67, I made the hardest decision of my life. I saw Jamal growing lazy. I saw him marrying Brittany, a woman who looked at price tags before she looked at faces. I wanted to know if they loved me or if they just loved the safety net I provided. So I lied. I told them a merger had gone wrong. I told them the market crashed. I told them I was bankrupt. I moved into their house not as a king but as a pauper. I wanted to see if they would catch me when I fell. Instead, they stepped on me. I hissed in pain as I dabbed a wet towel against my neck. The physical pain was grounding. It reminded me why I was here. It reminded me why I had to do what came next. The elevator chimed. It was the only warning before the doors slid open and Henderson walked in. He was wearing a tuxedo. I had probably pulled him out of a gala or a fundraiser, but he did not look annoyed. He looked ready for war. Henderson had been my legal shark for 30 years. He knew where every body was buried because he had helped me dig the holes. He stopped in the doorway of the bathroom and looked at me. His eyes narrowed as he saw the burns on my face. "Jesus, Otis," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Did they do that to you?" I turned off the tap and grabbed a towel. Brittany did not like my review of her soup, I said dryly. Henderson's jaw tightened. He set his briefcase down on the marble counter with a heavy thud. Do you want me to call the police? That is assault, Otis. We can have her in cuffs within the hour. I shook my head. No police. Not yet. Police is too easy. If she goes to jail, she becomes a victim. She gets to cry to her friends. No, Henderson. I want to hurt them where they actually feel it. I want to hit their wallets. I walked out of the bathroom and into the living room, pouring myself a glass of water. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. Protocol Omega, I said. Walk me through it. Henderson opened his briefcase and pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen a few times, and the blue light illuminated his face. Okay, Otis, here is the situation. Jamal and Brittany currently have possession of 4 supplemental credit cards linked to your primary Black Amex. They have a joint checking account which you fund monthly with $12,000 for household expenses. They are driving a Range Rover and a Mercedes, both titled to King Transport Holdings, and they are living in the colonial house which is held in irrevocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary. I took a sip of water. The cool liquid felt good against my throat, but it did nothing to quench the fire in my gut. Cut it, I said. Cut it all. Henderson looked up. All of it. Right now. It is 11 p.m. Otis. They might be stranded somewhere. Let them walk, I said, my voice cold. Cancel the black cards first. Report them as stolen if you have to. I want them declined the next time they try to buy so much as a pack of gum. Done, Henderson said, tapping the screen. Cards are deactivated. The bank accounts. I continued. I want the transfers stopped immediately, and I want the current balance drained. Leave them with 0. Actually, leave them with $1. I want them to know it was intentional. Henderson typed furiously. The transfer order is queued. The accounts will be frozen by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning when the bank opens. They will wake up broke. Good, I said. Now the cars. The Range Rover. Brittany drives, I said, picturing her smug face behind the wheel. I own that car. I bought it cash 3 years ago. Technically, the company owns it, Henderson corrected. Even better, I said. Report it as unauthorized use of company property. Use the GPS tracker. I want it repossessed. I do not care where it is. If she is at the spa, if she is at the grocery store, if she is in the driveway, take it. Henderson paused, his finger hovering over the tablet. Otis, this is going to humiliate them, publicly. I touched the burn on my cheek again. The skin was tight and angry. She threw boiling soup in my face, Henderson. She humiliated me in front of my son, and he stood there and watched. He told me to learn my place. Well, I am teaching them theirs. Take the cars. Henderson nodded and executed the command. Repossession orders are sent. The recovery team will be active at dawn. I walked over to the window and looked down at the city. Somewhere out there in the dark, my son was sleeping in a warm bed that I paid for next to a woman who despised me, thinking he had finally won. He thought he had kicked the old dog out of the house. He didn't realize the dog owned the house. And the house, Henderson, I said, turning back to him. The eviction notice is drafted, Henderson said. But Otis, you know the laws. It takes 30 days to evict a tenant, even a family member. We have to serve them. Notice we have to go to court. They are not tenants, I said. They are guests. And guests can be asked to leave at any time. They have established residency, Henderson argued. If we just lock them out, they could sue for illegal eviction. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who used to negotiate contracts with mobsters in Chicago. I am not going to lock them out, Henderson. I am going to make them want to leave. Who holds the utility contracts for the house? You do, Henderson said. Everything is in your name. Water, electricity, gas, internet. Turn it off, I said. Henderson's eyes widened. Otis, that is... It is my house, I said, cutting him off. I am canceling the services. I am going on an extended vacation, and I am shutting down my property. If there are squatters inside, that is their problem. Cut the power, cut the water, cut the heat. Let us see how long Brittany lasts in a cold house without Wi-Fi. Henderson let out a low whistle. You are ruthless, Otis. I forgot that about you. I had to be ruthless to survive, I said. I forgot it too for a while. I got soft. I thought love was enough. I thought if I gave them everything they would appreciate it. But you cannot buy respect, Henderson. You have to command it. Henderson closed the tablet. It is done. The utilities will be cut by noon tomorrow. The cards are dead. The cars are flagged. By this time tomorrow your son will be walking to a cold house with no money in his pocket. Thank you, Henderson, I said. You can go. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. He looked at me with a mixture of admiration and sadness. Otis, he said softly, I am sorry it came to this. I know how much you wanted that boy to be the heir. I turned away so he would not see the moisture in my eyes. He is still the heir, I said softly. He is inheriting exactly what he earned. Nothing. Henderson left, and I was alone in the silence of the penthouse again. I sat down in the leather armchair facing the window. My face was throbbing a steady drumbeat of pain that synced with my heart. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up in the dark room. It was a text from Jamal. I picked it up. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me, the weak part, the father part, hoped it was an apology. I hoped he was driving around looking for me. I hoped he was begging me to come home. I opened the message. Dad, do not bother coming back tomorrow either. We are changing the locks. Brittany says she does not feel safe with you in the house. If you come on the property, we will call the cops. Do not make this harder than it has to be. Just go find a shelter or something. Goodbye. I read the message twice. Then I read it a third time. Find a shelter. My own son. The boy I held when he had nightmares. The boy I taught to fish. He was telling me to go to a homeless shelter while he slept in my $1,000,000 home. I did not feel sad anymore. The sadness evaporated like mist under the morning sun, leaving only clarity. I typed a reply, but then I deleted it. Why warn him? Why give him the courtesy he never gave me? He wanted to call the cops. That was fine. I would save him the trouble. I put the phone down and let out a short, dry laugh. It echoed in the empty room. Goodbye, Jamal, I whispered to the empty air. I leaned back and closed my eyes. I needed to rest. I needed to heal. Because tomorrow the sun was going to rise, and when it did, I was going to bring the hammer down. They wanted a war. They had no idea who they were fighting. They were fighting a man who had nothing left to lose. And those are the most dangerous men on earth. I slept on the couch that night still wearing my soup-stained shirt. I wanted the smell of pumpkin and betrayal to be the first thing I noticed when I woke up. I wanted to remember. I never wanted to forget how this felt. Because tomorrow, there would be no mercy. Tomorrow, Protocol Omega would begin, and the House of King was going to fall. As I sipped my coffee in the penthouse suite, staring out at the Atlanta skyline, I felt a calm satisfaction wash over me. Across town, my dear daughter-in-law, Brittany, was about to have a morning she would never forget. She had stormed out of the house earlier, grabbing the keys to the black Range Rover, the one I paid cash for 3 years ago, leaving Jamal to deal with the fact that the hot water had mysteriously stopped working. She was heading to her favorite spa, probably thinking a $300 facial would wash away the memory of throwing soup in my face the night before. She had no idea she was driving straight into a trap I had set before the sun even came up. She drove like she always did, aggressive and entitled, weaving through traffic until she pulled into a busy gas station. She didn't use the self-service pumps, of course. Brittany King didn't pump her own gas. She pulled up to the full-service lane, rolled down her window just an inch, and barked at the attendant to fill it with premium. While he worked, she sat there scrolling through her phone, completely ignoring the man pumping $70 of fuel into the tank. When the attendant knocked on the window to say it was done, she didn't even look at him. She just slid the heavy black Amex card through the crack in the window. That card was her pride and joy. It had my name on the account, but she carried it like a royal scepter. She went back to her phone, waiting for the receipt so she could speed off. But the attendant didn't come back with a receipt. He came back with a frown. "Ma'am, the card was declined," he said, leaning down. Brittany laughed. It was that sharp, cruel laugh she used when a waiter got her order wrong. "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "That's a black card. It doesn't have a limit. Run it again and try not to mess it up this time." The attendant looked annoyed, but he went back inside. He tried it again, and again. He came back to the window, his patience gone. "Still declined, ma'am. The machine says pickup card. Do you have another form of payment?" Brittany's face flushed red. She snatched the card back, muttering insults under her breath. "Incompetent!" she hissed. She grabbed her phone and dialed Jamal. I can only imagine the panic in her voice. She screamed at him that the bank was messing up, that he needed to fix it immediately because she was late. Jamal, terrified of her temper, must have told her he was coming. He jumped into the Mercedes, my Mercedes, and raced down to the gas station. When he arrived, the scene was already chaotic. A line of cars had formed behind the Range Rover drivers, honking and yelling. Brittany was outside the vehicle screaming at the station manager who was blocking her exit. "Do you know who we are?" she was shrieking. "We are the kings. We don't steal gas. My father-in-law owns half this city." The manager, a burly man who looked like he had zero patience for entitled socialites, crossed his arms. "I don't care if you're the Queen of England, lady. You have a full tank of premium and your cards are dead. Pay up or I'm calling the cops." Jamal ran over, breathless and sweating. "Sir, I apologize," he said, trying to use his smooth business voice. "There must be a fraud alert on the system. Here, use my card." He handed the manager his personal debit card, the one funded by the monthly transfer I sent from the trust, the transfer I had canceled 12 hours ago. The manager ran it. He came back shaking his head. "Insufficient funds." Jamal froze. "What?" "That's impossible. Check it again." "It's declined, son," the manager said, stepping closer. "Now look, you're holding up my business. You have 5 minutes to pay me, or you're both going to jail for theft." Brittany turned on Jamal, her eyes wild. "Insufficient funds, Jamal. What did you do? Did you spend it? Did you gamble it away again?" "I didn't," Jamal shouted back, his voice cracking. Dad must have messed up the transfer." The honking grew louder. Someone threw a plastic cup at the Range Rover. The manager pulled out his phone. "That's it. I'm calling the police." "Wait," Jamal pleaded, desperation seizing him. "Wait, we have collateral." He looked at Brittany. "Give him your watch." Brittany clutched her wrist protectively. "What? No, this is my Rolex. You gave it to me for our anniversary." "Give him the damn watch, Brittany," Jamal screamed, sweat pouring down his face. "We have no cash. Do you want to go to jail in that dress?" Brittany looked at the angry manager, then at the mob of furious drivers. With a scream of pure frustration, she unclasped the gold watch and threw it at the manager. "Here, that's worth $10,000. Take it. But I'm coming back for it, and I'm suing you for everything you have." The manager caught the watch. He looked at it closely, turning it over in the sunlight. Then he laughed, a deep, mocking belly laugh. "Lady," he chuckled, "this ain't worth $10,000. This is a Canal Street knockoff. It's worth maybe $50. Look, the gold plating is flaking off on the clasp." Brittany froze. She stared at the manager, then slowly turned her head to look at Jamal. Her expression went from shock to murderous rage. "A knockoff," she whispered. "You told me it was real. You told me you bought it at the boutique." Jamal stepped back, holding his hands up in defense. "Baby, I can explain. Money was tight that month, and I didn't want to disappoint you." "You gave me a fake watch," Brittany shrieked, lunging at him. She started pummeling his chest with her fists. "You liar, you cheap, pathetic liar." The manager shook his head, amused. "I'm calling the cops," he said, turning away. But he didn't need to. Sirens were already wailing in the distance, getting louder by the second. Blue and red lights flashed against the morning sky as 2 police cruisers screeched into the gas station, blocking the exit. Brittany stopped, hitting Jamal. She smoothed her hair, putting on her best victim face. "Thank God," she said. "The police are here. They'll straighten this out." She walked toward the officers, chin high. "Officer, this man is trying to extort us," she began. The lead officer walked right past her to the Range Rover. He checked the license plate and touched his earpiece. "Target vehicle confirmed. Black Range Rover. License plate King 1. He turned to Brittany. "Are you Brittany King?" "Yes, I am," she said, confused. "And I'm telling you." "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle," the officer barked. He grabbed her arm, spun her around, and pushed her against the side of the SUV. "You are under arrest for possession of a stolen vehicle." "Stolen!" Brittany screamed as the handcuffs clicked. "This is my car. My father-in-law gave it to me." "The registered owner, Mr. Otis King, reported this vehicle stolen this morning," the officer said coldly. "He stated unauthorized individuals took the keys and were attempting to flee." Jamal ran forward. "Officer, that's a mistake. I'm his son." Another officer stepped in front of him. "Mr. King filed a specific affidavit, son. He said you have no permission to operate company vehicles. Is that Mercedes yours?" Jamal went pale. That one was reported too," the officer said. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." As they were being shoved into the squad cars, Brittany screaming about her rights and Jamal crying about a misunderstanding, the gas station manager walked up holding the fake Rolex. "Hey, officer, add theft of services to the charges," he said, tossing the fake watch to the cop. "They tried to pay with this piece of junk." I watched the whole thing on Henderson's laptop, tapping my finger on the desk. They thought they had hit rock bottom. They were wrong. They hadn't even started to fall. The Uber smelled like stale pine air freshener and despair. It was a beat-up Toyota Camry, a far cry from the Range Rover Brittany had been dragged out of in handcuffs just hours before. The police had released them with citations and a court date thanks to Henderson pulling a few strings behind the scenes. He wanted them out on the street, not sitting in a holding cell. He wanted them to see what was happening to their kingdom. Brittany sat as far away from Jamal as the back seat allowed. Her mascara was running, staining her cheeks black, but her eyes were dry and full of venom. She hadn't said a word since the station. She just stared out the window, clutching her wrist where the fake Rolex used to be. The police had kept it as evidence. The shame of that knockoff watch seemed to hurt her more than the criminal charges. Jamal was a wreck. He was sweating through his shirt, frantically tapping on his phone, trying to call me for the 50th time. Every time it went to voicemail, he let out a little whimper. "Pick up, Dad, pick up," he muttered, his voice cracking. "You can't do this. This is insane." The Uber driver, a young guy with headphones around his neck, looked in the rearview mirror. "You guys want me to drop you at the gate or go up the driveway?" "Just drive," Brittany snapped. As the car turned the corner onto Willow Creek Boulevard, the first thing I saw from my vantage point across the street was the flashing yellow lights. I was sitting in the back of a Lincoln, the windows tinted so dark that noon looked like midnight. Henderson sat next to me, checking his watch. "They are right on time," Henderson said. I looked through the glass. The scene in front of the Colonial House, the house I bought with cash in 1998, was chaotic. It looked like a tornado had touched down specifically in the front yard. A team of 6 men in tactical black uniforms were moving with military precision. They weren't movers. They were private security contractors, the kind you hire when you need a problem solved physically. They were hauling furniture boxes and clothes out the front door and dumping them unceremoniously onto the manicured lawn. Jamal's golf clubs clattered onto the driveway. Brittany's Peloton bike was sitting in the flower bed. A mountain of designer clothes, or what she thought were designer clothes, was piling up near the mailbox. The Uber stopped. Before it even came to a complete halt, Jamal threw the door open and scrambled out. Hey, what are you doing?" he screamed, running toward the house. Brittany stumbled out after him, her heels clicking on the pavement. "My things. Those are my things. You're ruining my vintage coats," Jamal charged at the nearest security guard, a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. "Get away from my house. I'm calling the police." The guard didn't even flinch. He just stepped forward, blocking Jamal's path with a chest like a barrel. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Step back, sir," the guard said. His voice was deep, gravelly, and brooked no argument. "This is my property," Jamal yelled, pointing a shaking finger at the house. "I live here. You can't just throw us out. Where is my father? Did he send you? Dad?" He spun around, looking wild-eyed at the street, at the neighbors who were gathering on their porches, phones out, recording the spectacle. Mrs. Higgins from next door was drinking tea, watching with undisguised glee. She never liked Brittany. Dad Jamal screamed again. "I know you're watching." I sat in the limo, my hand gripping the door handle. My heart hammered against my ribs. It took every ounce of strength I had not to open the door, not to step out and fix it. That was the instinct, the fatherly instinct that had made me weak for so long. I wanted to protect him, but protecting him was what had destroyed him. I stayed seated. The security guard reached into his tactical vest and pulled out a thick envelope. He slapped it into Jamal's chest. "Read it," the guard said. Jamal fumbled with the papers, tearing the envelope open. His hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped it. Brittany snatched it from him, her eyes scanning the legal text furiously. This says the house belongs to the King Family Trust," Brittany stammered. "That's right," the guard said. "And the trust has a sole beneficiary, Mr. Otis King. But we live here." "We have rights," Brittany shrieked. "You have to give us 30 days. You can't just kick us out." The guard pointed to a highlighted paragraph on the second page. "Read Clause 14B, ma'am. The Conduct and Gratitude Clause." Brittany squinted at the paper. "Any occupant residing in trust property by grace of the beneficiary may be removed immediately without notice upon demonstration of gross ingratitude, physical assault, or conduct detrimental to the beneficiary's well-being." She looked up, her face pale. "Gross ingratitude. You threw hot soup at the owner?" The guard said, his face impassive. That constitutes physical assault and conduct detrimental. The lease, which was never a lease but a revocable license to occupy, is terminated. Effective immediately. Jamal grabbed the paper back. Dad put a gratitude clause in the deed I did, 5 years ago. Henderson thought it was petty at the time. I told him it was insurance. I never thought I'd have to use it. But looking at my son now, reading the words I wrote to protect myself from my own flesh and blood, I felt a cold vindication. "This is illegal," Jamal shouted, throwing the papers on the ground. "This is my home. I grew up here." "And you grew out of it," the guard said. He checked his watch. "You have 52 minutes. 52 minutes for what?" Jamal asked, bewildered. "To get your trash off Mr. King's lawn," the guard said. "At 1 p.m. a waste management crew is arriving to clear the debris. Anything left on the property line goes into the compactor." "The compactor?" Brittany screamed. "These are Chanel. These are Gucci." "Then I suggest you start packing," the guard said. He turned his back on them and signaled his team. "Lock it up." I watched as a locksmith who had been working quietly at the front door finished drilling out the core. He slotted a new heavy-duty deadbolt in place and clicked it shut. The sound was loud enough to carry across the street. Click. That was the sound of my generosity running out. Jamal ran to the door and pounded on it. "Dad, open up. Please, I'm sorry about the soup. I'm sorry about everything. Just let us in. It's freezing out here." No one answered. The house stood silent, dark, and imposing. The utilities had already been cut just as I ordered. Brittany was running around the lawn, frantically trying to gather her shoes, throwing them into a pile. "Jamal, stop banging on the door and help me. They're going to crush my shoes." Jamal slid down the door until he was sitting on the welcome mat, a mat that said "Home Sweet Home." He put his head in his hands and started to sob. It wasn't a dignified cry. It was the wailing of a child who had been told no for the first time in his life. I watched him. I watched the boy I had carried on my shoulders. I watched the man who had told me to learn my place. He looked small. He looked pathetic. Henderson cleared his throat beside me. "Otis, do you want to intervene?" I looked at Henderson. His face was soft, sympathetic. He expected me to cave. He expected me to roll down the window and write a check. I looked back at Jamal. If I helped him now, he would learn nothing. If I helped him now, the soup would just be the beginning. Next time it would be a knife. Or a pillow over my face while I slept. "No," I said, my voice raspy. "Drive." "But sir, drive Henderson." The driver pulled the Lincoln away from the curb. The tires hummed on the asphalt. I didn't look back. I stared straight ahead at the road. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jamal. "Dad, please. We have nowhere to go. Brittany's parents won't take us. We have no money. I'm scared." I typed a response this time. My fingers flew across the screen. "You should have thought about that before you watched your wife burn my face. You're a man, Jamal. Figure it out." I hit send, then I blocked the number. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than burying my wife. Harder than nearly going bankrupt in '82. Cutting off your own child feels like cutting off a limb. It hurts. It bleeds. But sometimes the limb is gangrenous. Sometimes you have to cut it off to save the body. We drove in silence for a long time. The city passed by in a blur of gray and steel. "Where to now, Mr. King?" the driver asked. I took a deep breath. The image of Jamal crying on the doormat was burned into my retinas. I needed to focus. I needed to remember that this wasn't just about punishment, it was about survival. "Take me to the studio," I said. Henderson looked surprised. "The broadcast studio? Why?" "Because I said adjusting my cuffs. Brittany isn't going to take this lying down. She's going to go on the offensive. She's going to try to spin this. I need to be ready." Henderson nodded slowly. "You think she'll go to the press?" "I know she will," I said. "She's a narcissist with a smartphone. She won't see this as a consequence of her actions. She'll see it as an attack. She'll play the victim. And when she does, I need the world to see the truth." I leaned back in the seat. The war wasn't over. The battle for the house was won, but the battle for my reputation was just beginning. "Pull up the security footage from the dining room," I told Henderson. "You mean the soup incident?" "Yes. Have the tech team clean up the audio. I want every splash, every insult, every laugh to be crystal clear. You're going to release it." "Not yet," I said. "I'm going to wait. I'm going to let her tell her lie first. I'm going to let her dig a hole so deep she can never climb out of it. And then when she thinks she has everyone fooled, I'm going to turn the lights on. The car sped up, merging onto the highway. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I was planning. I was calculating. I was Otis King, and I was done being the victim. The glow of the iPad screen was the only light in the penthouse study as I sat there with a glass of scotch in my hand, watching my family destroy my reputation in real time. It was 8 p.m. Brittany had gone live on Instagram 10 minutes ago, and she already had 5,000 viewers. She was sitting on the edge of a bed in what looked like a Motel 6. The lighting was dim, and she was wearing a thick, oversized coat inside the room, shivering for dramatic effect. Her makeup was smeared just enough to look tragic, but not enough to look messy. She had perfected the art of the victim aesthetic. Jamal was sitting behind her head in his hands, looking like a broken man. It was a tableau of misery, carefully curated for maximum sympathy. "Hey guys," she whispered into the camera, wiping away a fake tear. "I know I haven't posted in a while, but something terrible happened. We are homeless." The comments section exploded instantly. Hearts, crying faces, questions asking who hurt her. She waited, letting the suspense build, watching the viewer count tick upward. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was weaponizing her audience. "My father-in-law, Otis," she continued, her voice trembling. "We took him in when he had nothing. We gave him a room. We fed him. We treated him like a king. And last night, he just snapped." I took a sip of scotch. The liquid was smooth, but it burned going down. I watched as she spun a web of lies so thick it could catch a whale. "He has dementia, guys," she said, tapping her temple. "We tried to get him help, but he refuses. Last night I made him soup, his favorite, and he started screaming that it was poison. He grabbed the bowl and..." She paused, covering her mouth with her hand, letting out a sob. "He threw it at me, guys. Boiling hot soup, right in my face. Look." She leaned into the camera, pointing to a slight redness on her neck. It was probably from rubbing it too hard before the broadcast, but to her followers it was evidence of assault. "And then he kicked us out," she sobbed. "He physically threw Jamal out of the house, in the middle of winter, with nothing but the clothes on our backs. He changed the locks. He froze our accounts. He left us to freeze. We have nowhere to go. We are terrified he is going to come after us." I watched the comments scroll by faster than I could read them. What a monster. "Call the cops, Brittany. Someone needs to handle that old man. Where does he live? Let's pay him a visit." The internet mob had arrived. They didn't care about facts. They didn't ask why a broke old man had the power to freeze bank accounts or evict the homeowners. They just saw a pretty crying woman and a sad husband, and they wanted blood. "My blood," Jamal finally spoke up in the background. His voice was low and pathetic. "We just wanted to help him," he muttered. "We loved him. That broke me more than Brittany's lies." Jamal knew the truth. He stood there and watched her throw that soup. He watched my skin blister. And now he was sitting in a cheap motel room co-signing her fiction because he was too weak to stand on his own 2 feet. He was selling his father for likes and sympathy donations. My phone started blowing up with text messages. Neighbors from the old block, former employees, people I hadn't spoken to in years. "Otis, is this true, man? I saw the video, you need help. Mr. King, people are posting your address." Then came the pictures. "Mrs. Higgins, my neighbor, sent me a photo of the driveway back at the Colonial House. Someone had driven by and thrown eggs at my old Chevy Silverado, the truck I kept for sentimental reasons. Yellow yolk was dripping down the windshield. Someone else had spray-painted abuser on the mailbox in red paint. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest. They weren't just attacking me, they were attacking my name, the name I put on trucks that delivered food during hurricanes, the name I put on scholarship funds, the name I built from nothing. Brittany was trying to burn down 50 years of integrity with a 10-minute video. I did not type a comment. I did not report the video. I did not engage with the trolls who were currently finding my business email and sending death threats. I picked up my other phone, the secure line, and called Henderson. He answered on the first ring. He sounded tired. "I am watching it," Otis Henderson said. "It is bad. The hashtag Justice for Brittany is trending in Atlanta. We need to issue a statement denying the allegations immediately." "No statement," I said, my voice steady. "A statement makes it a," he said, she said, "situation. She is playing to the court of public opinion, Henderson. She thinks she can cry her way into a settlement. She thinks if she makes enough noise, I will pay her to shut up just to protect my reputation. She is winning." "Otis," Henderson warned, The local news just picked it up. They are running a crawler about a prominent Atlanta businessman accused of elder violence. They do not know it is you yet, but they will find out by morning. Let them find out, I said. Henderson, do we have the footage? Yes, Henderson said. The security team pulled the hard drive from the house server before they locked up. The camera in the dining room has a 4K resolution and high-fidelity audio. It captured everything. The soup, the insults, Jamal standing there doing nothing. It is crystal clear. Good, I said. Do not just release it. Weaponize it. What do you mean? Henderson asked. I want you to upload the raw file, I said. No edits, no commentary, just the date and time stamp. Upload it to every major platform. Tag the news stations that are running her story. Tag her sponsors. Tag her friends. And Henderson, I added, leaning forward in my chair. Yes, sir. Draft the lawsuit, I said. Defamation of character, slander, libel, intentional infliction of emotional distress, filing a false police report, and name Jamal as a co-conspirator. I want the damages to be astronomical. I want a number so high that her great-grandchildren will be born in debt. Otis suing your own son for defamation. That is the nuclear option, Henderson said quietly. They threw the first bomb, Henderson, I said. I am just dropping the second one. Do it. I hung up the phone. On the screen, Brittany was wrapping up her performance. We are going to try to sleep, she whispered, wiping her dry eyes. Thank you for the donations, guys. The link is in my bio if you want to help us get food for tomorrow. We just want to feel safe again. She ended the stream. The screen went black, reflecting my own face back at me. I looked at the burns on my cheek. They were real. Her fear was fake. I stood up and walked to the window. Atlanta was shining below me, a grid of lights and movement. Somewhere down there, people were sharpening their pitchforks, coming for the monster Brittany had created. But monsters are scary because they hide in the dark. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to turn on every light in the city. I poured myself another drink. My hand wasn't shaking anymore. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold mechanical resolve. They wanted to play the victim. Fine. I would show the world what a real victim looks like. And then I would show them what justice looks like. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Twitter. Then another, then 1,000. The video was up. I clicked on the link. The footage was grainy at first, then sharpened into high definition. The audio was crisp. This is not your dining room. My voice calm, steady. That is what you deserve. Brittany's voice, shrill, hateful. The splash of the soup, the steam rising from my face. Jamal's indifference. It was all there, every ugly second of it. I refreshed the page. The comments were already changing. The tide was turning. The internet detectives were analyzing the timestamps, realizing Brittany had lied about everything. Wait, she threw the soup first. OMG, look at the son, he didn't even help him. She lied. She said he has dementia. He sounds perfectly fine. That burn looks serious. The notifications changed from hate to horror. The hashtag changed from justice for Brittany to Brittany is a liar. My phone rang. It was Jamal. I looked at the screen. I watched it ring. I imagined him in that motel room watching his wife's lie crumble in real time, watching the donations stop, watching the comments turn vicious. I imagined the panic in his eyes as he realized he had bet on the wrong horse. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't done. This was just the opening salvo. They had tried to destroy my name. Now I was going to take their freedom. I sent a text to Henderson. Send the process server to the motel. Serve them tonight. I want them to wake up to a lawsuit. I turned off the iPad. The room was silent again. The only sound was the ice clinking in my glass. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. Bitter cold victory. They tried to bury me. They forgot I was a seed. And tomorrow I was going to grow a forest of thorns around them that they would never escape. The morning sun hit the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, but it brought no warmth to the city of Atlanta. I sat in the high back leather chair, my eyes fixed on the large monitor Henderson had set up on the mahogany desk. It was 9 in the morning. The video had been live for exactly 1 hour. I watched the view count climb. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. It was moving faster than a wildfire in a dry pine forest. I clicked play again. I needed to see it. I needed to make sure the world saw what I felt. The footage was raw, no music, no commentary, just the cold, hard reality of a Tuesday night dinner. The camera angle was high-mounted in the corner of the dining room, capturing the entire scene in 4K resolution. There I was sitting at the end of the table, looking smaller than I felt. There was Brittany in her Chanel dress face, twisted in a sneer that no filter could hide. The audio was the most damning part. It cut through the silence of the room like a gunshot. "That is exactly what you deserve." Her voice was clear. It wasn't the trembling victim voice she used on her Instagram livestream. It was the voice of a bully, the voice of a predator. Then the splash, the thick orange liquid hitting my face, the steam rising off my skin, the way my head snapped back in shock. But the part that made the internet explode wasn't the assault. It was the silence that followed. The camera panned slightly, catching Jamal. He didn't jump up. He didn't scream. He didn't rush to get ice. He just sat there looking annoyed. "She is right, Dad." The words hung in the air, digital poison. I scrolled down to the comments. The tide hadn't just turned, it had become a tsunami. "I defended her last night and I feel sick. She literally burned him. Look at the husband. He is just watching. What kind of man watches his father get burned?" She said, "He had dementia. He looks perfectly lucid. She is the psycho." That is assault. Why aren't they in jail? The hashtag Brittany Azalier was now the #1 trending topic in the state. The Justice for Brittany hashtag had vanished, replaced by demands for her arrest. Henderson walked into the room, his phone pressed to his ear. He listened for a moment, then hung up, a rare smile touching his lips. That was the managing partner at Keller Williams, Henderson said. "Brittany's brokerage." And I asked, not looking away from the screen. "They fired her," Henderson said. "Effective immediately. They are scrubbing her profile from the website as we speak. Apparently, having an agent who assaults the elderly on camera is bad for selling luxury estates." I nodded slowly. It was the first domino. Brittany defined herself by her job. She wasn't just a realtor, she was a brand. She spent years cultivating an image of high-class success. In 60 minutes, I had turned that brand into toxic waste. No one in this town would buy a doghouse from her now, let alone a mansion. "She just lost her 6-figure income," I said, my voice flat. "And Jamal has been unemployed for 6 months, pretending to go to the office while living off my allowance. They have 0 income, 0 assets, and a mountain of debt." Henderson sat down opposite me. "It is a total collapse, Otis. We have reports that the charity board she sits on is drafting her removal letter. The country club is reviewing her membership under the moral turpitude clause. You didn't just evict them. You exiled them from society." I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold. "They exiled themselves, Henderson." I just turned on the lights. Just then the intercom on my desk buzzed. It was the concierge from the lobby downstairs, a man named Pierre who had been with the hotel for 20 years. He knew me from the old days when I used the hotel for board meetings. Mr. King Pierre's voice was hushed, urgent. "I apologize for the disturbance, sir, but there is a gentleman here to see you. He is causing a scene." I knew who it was before Pierre said the name. "It is your son, sir, Mr. Jamal King. He says it is an emergency. He says he needs to see his father." I looked at Henderson. He raised an eyebrow. "How did he find you?" Henderson asked. "We kept this location off the books." I stood up, walking to the window. I looked down at the street. I couldn't see them from this height, but I knew they were there. "He hired a private investigator," I said. "Probably used the last limit on one of his hidden credit cards. Or maybe Brittany pawned her engagement ring. They are desperate, Henderson. Desperate people get smart very quickly." "Tell him to leave," Henderson said to the intercom. "Mr. King is not accepting visitors." "No," I said, cutting him off. Henderson looked at me surprised. "Otis, you do not have to do this. We can have security remove him." "I want to see him," I said. I walked over to the wall where a panel of security monitors was mounted. I tapped the screen, switching the feed to the lobby camera. There he was. Jamal looked terrible. He was wearing the same clothes from yesterday, wrinkled and stained. His hair was messy. He looked like he hadn't slept in 48 hours. But it was what he was doing that caught my attention. He wasn't standing at the desk demanding to see me. He was on his knees. Right there in the middle of the marble lobby of the Grand Marquis Hotel, my son was kneeling on the floor, hands clasped together like he was in church. People were walking by, staring, whispering. Guests with Louis Vuitton luggage were skirting around him like he was a puddle of dirty water. He was putting on a show. Please, he was sobbing loud enough for the lobby microphone to pick it up. Please just tell my dad I am sorry. I made a mistake. I just want to apologize. I love him. Please help me. It was pathetic, and it was calculated. He knew I was watching, or he hoped I was. He knew that Otis King, the businessman, cared about reputation. He thought if he embarrassed me enough, if he made enough of a spectacle, I would come down just to make him stop. He thought he could weaponize my shame against me. He didn't realize that I had no shame left. Brittany had burned it off my face. Henderson watched the screen with disgust. He is acting Otis. Look at him. He checks his phone every time he wipes his eyes. He is checking the stream. He probably has someone recording this too. I zoomed in on the image. Henderson was right. Jamal's grief was loud, but his eyes were darting around the room, checking the angles, looking for the reaction. He was trying to counteract the viral video of the soup. He was trying to create a new narrative, the prodigal son begging for forgiveness from the cold-hearted father. "Let him up," I said. Otis Henderson warned. "Send him up." I repeated, my voice hard as iron, but not alone. I want security in the elevator with him, and I want them to search him. I do not trust him not to bring a weapon. Desperation makes people dangerous. Henderson relayed the order to the front desk. I watched on the screen as Pierre approached Jamal. Jamal stood up immediately, his fake tears vanishing for a split second before he composed his face into a mask of tragic hope. 2 large security guards flanked him. They patted him down. Jamal looked offended, but he didn't resist. He was playing the role of the humbled penitent. They walked him to the elevator. I went back to my desk and sat down. I placed my hands flat on the mahogany surface. I wanted to look immovable. I wanted to look like the mountain he had tried to climb and failed. When the elevator doors opened a minute later, Jamal burst into the room. He stopped short when he saw the size of the penthouse. His eyes went wide, taking in the luxury, the art on the walls, the view of the city. For a second, the greed flashed across his face, naked and ugly. He was looking at his inheritance. Then he remembered his script. "Dad," he cried, rushing forward. He tried to come around the desk to hug me, but Henderson stepped in his path, blocking him. "Sit down," Jamal Henderson said, pointing to the stiff wooden chair opposite my desk. Jamal stopped. He looked at me, his eyes welling up with fresh tears. "Dad, look at your face," he whispered, pointing at my burn. "Oh my God. I didn't know it was that bad. I am so sorry. Brittany, she is sick, Dad. She isn't herself." I didn't speak. I just watched him. I sat there in silence, letting his words hang in the air. I wanted him to hear how hollow they sounded. "I came to beg you, Dad." Jamal continued talking fast, now manic. "We have nothing. The hotel kicked us out because the card declined. We slept in the car last night. It was freezing. Brittany is crying nonstop. She is sorry. We are both so sorry. We learned our lesson. Okay, you won. You proved your point." He leaned forward, gripping the edge of the desk. "Just give us a chance to make it right. We can go back to the house. I will take care of you. I will fire the chef. I will make sure Brittany never raises her voice again. Just, please, Dad, end this. People are attacking us. I lost my friends. My phone won't stop ringing with people calling me a monster." I finally leaned forward. The leather of my chair creaked. "You are a monster, Jamal," I said softly. Jamal flinched like I had hit him. "Dad?" "No," I said, holding up a hand. "A man who watches his wife assault his father and does nothing is a monster. A man who tells his father to learn his place in the house his father paid for is a monster." Jamal's face hardened. The sadness evaporated, replaced by the petulant anger I had seen at the dinner table. I was trying to keep the peace, he shouted. "You know how she gets. I have to live with her." "You chose to live with her," I corrected. "And now you are living with the consequences." I reached into the drawer of my desk and pulled out a file. It wasn't thick, but it was heavy with implications. I tossed it across the desk. It slid to a stop right in front of Jamal's hands. "What is this?" he asked, eyeing it suspiciously. "Open it," I said. Jamal opened the folder. He read the first page. His face went from pale to ghostly white. His hands started to shake uncontrollably. Where did you get this?" he stammered. "I have my sources," I said. "It was a loan application. A loan for $500,000 from a private lender." a lender known for breaking legs when payments were late. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the signature at the bottom. It was my signature, or rather a very good forgery of my signature. "You forged my name, Jamal," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You took out a $500,000 loan against the commercial warehouse in the district. You used the money to fund your lifestyle, to buy Brittany her jewelry, to pretend you were a big shot." Jamal dropped the paper. "Dad, I can explain. It was an investment. I was going to pay it back." "It is a felony," I said. "Bank fraud, identity theft, elder financial abuse." I looked at Henderson. "How many years is that, Henderson?" Depending on the judge, Henderson said, checking his nails. 10 to 15. Federal. Jamal slid out of the chair and onto his knees again. This time it wasn't for show. This was real terror. "Dad, please, do not call the FBI. They will kill me in prison. I am your son. You cannot send your son to prison." I looked down at him. I felt a pang of old love, a ghost of the affection I once held for the toddler who used to hold my hand crossing the street. But then I felt the burn on my cheek. I remembered the soup. I remembered the silence. "I am not calling the police," I said. Jamal let out a breath, a sob of relief. "Oh, thank God. Thank you, Dad. I knew you loved me. I knew." "I am not calling the police," I repeated, cutting him off. "Because the police are safe. The police follow rules." I leaned over the desk, my face close to his. "I am going to call the lender, Jamal. I am going to tell them that the signature is fake. I am going to tell them that the collateral they think they have doesn't exist. I am going to tell them that you defrauded them." Jamal's eyes bulged. "Dad, they are animals. They will hurt me. Then you better pay them," I said coldly. I stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. "You have no money. You have no home. And now you have a debt to men who do not accept apologies. I suggest you start running, son, because I am done saving you." Henderson opened the door. Security grabbed Jamal by the arms. He was screaming now, really screaming, begging, pleading. Dad, no, do not do this." They dragged him out. The door closed. The silence returned to the penthouse. I walked to the window. My hands were trembling just a little. It is a terrible thing to throw your child to the wolves. But he had invited the wolves into our home. He had tried to feed me to them. Now he was going to see what it felt like to be on the menu. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper that sounded like a blade being drawn from a sheath. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, my back to the room, watching the Atlanta traffic crawl like beetles far below. I did not turn around immediately. I wanted him to see the room first. I wanted him to see the 20-foot ceilings, the Italian marble floors, the original Basquiat painting hanging above the fireplace. I wanted him to see the kingdom he had been too blind to realize existed. Henderson stood by the desk, his arms crossed, his face a mask of professional indifference. Dad Jamal's voice cracked. It was a small sound in a big room. I turned around slowly. My son looked like a man who had been through a spin cycle. His designer jeans were stained at the knees. His shirt was untucked and missing a button. His eyes were red and swollen, but they weren't looking at me. They were darting around the penthouse, drinking in the luxury with a hunger that made my stomach turn. For a split second, the desperation on his face was replaced by pure, unadulterated greed. He was calculating the square footage. He was appraising the furniture. He was wondering how much of this would be his when I died. Then he remembered why he was there. He dropped to his knees right on the imported Persian rug. "Dad," he sobbed, throwing his hands up like a preacher. "Oh my God, Dad. I am so sorry. I had no idea. I didn't know you had all of this." He wasn't apologizing for the soup. He wasn't apologizing for the disrespect. He was apologizing for betting against the house and losing. "Get up, Jamal," I said, my voice flat. "You are staining the rug." He scrambled to his feet, wiping his nose on his sleeve. He took a step toward me, his hands reaching out, but Henderson stepped forward, blocking his path. Jamal flinched like a beaten dog. "Dad, please," he pleaded, his eyes wide and wet. "You have to understand, Brittany. She isn't well. We have been trying to keep it a secret, but she is sick." I raised an eyebrow. "Sick?" I asked. She looked healthy enough when she was throwing boiling liquid at my face. She looked strong enough when she was screaming at me to get out of my own house. "It is mental, Dad," Jamal said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "It is postpartum depression. She has never been the same since Leo was born. The hormones, They make her do crazy things. She didn't mean it. She loves you. She cries about it all the time. She just needs help, Dad, not this. Not homelessness. I stared at him. The audacity was breathtaking. Postpartum depression, I repeated. Jamal, your son is 5 years old. Leo is in kindergarten. Are you telling me she has had postpartum depression for 60 months? Jamal stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. It lingers, Dad. It is a condition. You don't understand modern medicine. I understand a lie when I hear one, I said. I understand that you are using a serious medical condition as a shield for your wife's cruelty. I understand that you are a coward who would rather blame biology than hold your wife accountable for assaulting your father. Jamal's face crumpled. Dad, please. We are sleeping in a Motel 6. The bedbugs are biting us. Brittany hasn't stopped screaming for 12 hours. Just give us the keys back. Turn the water on. We will be better, I promise. I will make her apologize. I will make her cook you dinner every night. I walked over to the mahogany desk. It was a massive piece of furniture, solid and imposing, just like I used to be. On top of it sat a single manila folder. It wasn't thick, but it was heavy. I picked it up. I do not care about Brittany, I said. I do not care about her fake depression. I do not care about her apologies. She is a scorpion, Jamal. Scorpions sting. That is what they do. I was a fool for letting her in my house, but I rectified that mistake yesterday. Jamal looked confused. Then we can come back. If you forgive us. I threw the folder across the room. It spun through the air papers, fanning out as it hit the floor at Jamal's feet. I do not care about the soup, Jamal. I roared, my voice finally breaking the calm facade. I care about this. Jamal looked down at the papers. He didn't pick them up. He didn't have to. He knew what they were. I saw the color drain from his face, leaving him looking like a gray ghost. His knees started to shake. Pick it up, I commanded. He crouched down, his hands trembling so bad he could barely grasp the paper. He lifted the top document. It was a loan agreement. A promissory note. I can explain, he whispered. $500,000, I said, my voice dropping to a lethal quiet. You borrowed $500,000 against the deed to the warehouse on 4th Street. My warehouse. The warehouse that holds the logistics mainframe for the entire Southeast region. Jamal swallowed hard. It was an investment, Dad. A sure thing. Crypto. It was going to double in a month. I was going to pay it back before you even knew. I wanted to surprise you. I wanted to show you I could build something too. You forged my signature, I said. I walked around the desk, closing the distance between us. I wanted to see his eyes. I wanted to see the soul of the man who shared my name. You sat at my kitchen table, you ate my food, and then you traced my signature onto a loan application from a private lender. And not just any lender, Jamal. You didn't go to Bank of America. You didn't go to Wells Fargo. I pointed at the logo on the top of the paper. It was a shell company. A front. You went to the Tracksuit Mafia, I said, using the street name for the Eastern European syndicate that ran the underground lending in the city. You borrowed money from men who do not send late notices. They send guys with baseball bats. Jamal started to cry again, but this time it was real. This was the tears of a man who knows he is drowning. They said it was easy money, Dad. Brittany wanted the renovation. She wanted the pool house. She said we needed to upgrade the image. She said you would never notice. She said I said disgusted. You are a grown man, Jamal. You put my entire business at risk for a pool house. You committed a felony, bank fraud, identity theft, elder abuse. I turned to Henderson. How many years is that, Henderson? Henderson adjusted his glasses, his eyes cold. Federal charges for the fraud alone carry up to 30 years, sir. The forgery adds another 10. And since the victim is over 65, there are enhancements. If we press charges, he will never see the outside of a cell again. Jamal dropped the paper. He grabbed the leg of my pants. Dad, no. Please. You can't put me in jail. I am your son. I am Leo's father. Who will take care of him? Brittany can't do it alone. Get off me, I said, shaking him loose. I stepped back, straightening my pants. I looked down at him. He was a mess of snot and tears, a pathetic creature who had traded his integrity for a lifestyle he didn't earn. I am not going to call the police, I said. Jamal looked up, hope flashing in his eyes. You aren't. No, I said. Police are for citizens. Police follow rules. Police have paperwork and due process. You didn't steal from a citizen, Jamal. You stole from a king, and you borrowed from sharks. I walked back to the window looking out at the city again. I am not going to prosecute you, I said. I am just going to step aside. What does that mean? Jamal asked, his voice trembling. It means I called the lender this morning, I said. I spoke to Mr. Volkov. I told him that the signature on the loan was a forgery. I told him that the collateral, my warehouse, was never yours to leverage. I sent him a copy of the deed proving I am the sole owner. Jamal gasped. He looked like he was going to be sick. You told them. I did, I said, turning back to face him. I told them that the loan is invalid. I told them that I will not be paying a single cent of that $500,000. I told them that if they want their money back, they need to talk to the man who took it. Jamal stood up slowly, backing away from me as if I were holding a knife. Dad, they will kill me. You know what they do. They will break my legs. Then you better pay them, I said coldly. But I don't have it. Jamal screamed. It is gone. The market crashed. Brittany spent the rest on the jewelry. We have nothing. Then you better start running, I said. Because, Mr. Volkov was very unhappy when I hung up the phone. He asked for your current address. You didn't, Jamal whispered. You didn't give it to him. I looked at Henderson. Henderson handed me a slip of paper. I gave him the address of the Motel 6 on the highway, I said. Room 204. Is that right? Jamal's face went white. He looked at the door, then back at me. You sentenced me to death, he whispered. You sentenced yourself, I said. You threw the soup, Jamal. You lit the match. I am just letting the fire burn. I pointed to the door. Get out. Jamal didn't argue. He didn't beg. He looked at me with a look of pure terror, a realization that the safety net was gone, that the world was hard and cold and sharp. He turned and ran. He ran out of the penthouse. He ran to the elevator. He ran for his life. I listened to the doors close. The silence returned. Henderson cleared his throat. Mr. Volkov is a reasonable man, Otis. He won't kill him. Not immediately. He will want his money first. I know, I said. Jamal has 2 kidneys. He has a strong back. He can work. He will learn the value of $1 the hard way. The way I did. I walked over to the table and picked up the forged loan document. I tore it in half. Then I tore it in half again. Good luck, son, I whispered. I poured myself another drink. My hand was steady. My heart was heavy, but my conscience was clear. I had raised a wolf in sheep's clothing, and today I had thrown him back to the pack. Now I had one more problem to solve. The woman who whispered in his ear. The woman who spent the money. Brittany. She thought she was safe because she didn't sign the loan. She thought she was just an innocent bystander. She was wrong. Henderson, I said, turning away from the window. Get the private investigator on the line. I want to know about that shell company Brittany set up in the Cayman Islands. Henderson smiled. The one she thinks you do not know about. The one she used to launder the money Jamal stole, I said. Yes. It is time to introduce Brittany to the FBI. The sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry red. It was fitting. The night was coming. And for my family, it was going to be a long, cold, dark one. I sat in the darkness of the penthouse study with the glowing light of the surveillance monitor painting my face in shades of blue and gray. Henderson was standing behind me, pouring 2 glasses of water, his hand shaking just slightly. We were not looking at a spreadsheet or a legal brief. We were looking at a live audio waveform on my laptop screen. The line was jagged, spiking with the sounds of screaming coming from a cheap motel room 10 miles away. You see, I did not just cut them off. I did not just throw them out. I had been suspicious of Brittany for a long time. A woman who buys Chanel bags but hides her phone screen when her husband walks in is a woman with secrets. 6 months ago, I had a private investigator install a listening software on her phone. I never used it until tonight. I wanted to give them privacy. I wanted to trust them. But tonight, privacy was a luxury they could no longer afford. I adjusted the volume on the headset. The door to room 204 of the Motel 6 slammed open with a force that rattled the microphone. I could hear Jamal's heavy breathing. It sounded like a man who had just run a marathon with a knife in his back. "You did this," he screamed. His voice was raw, tearing through the cheap speakers. "You did this, you stupid, selfish woman. He knows everything, Brittany. He knows about the loan. He knows about the forgery. He told the Russians. I could hear the rustle of cheap bedsheets. Brittany did not sound scared. She sounded annoyed. "Lower your voice, Jamal," she hissed. "The walls are paper thin. Do you want the neighbors to call the cops?" "I do not care about the cops," Jamal yelled. "I care about the men who are going to come and break my knees because you wanted a pool house." He told them Brittany. He called Volkov. He told them I defrauded them. They are going to kill me. There was a silence, then the sound of a lighter flicking. Brittany was smoking. She always smoked when she was plotting. "He is lying," she said calmly. "He is trying to scare you. He is your father. He wouldn't feed you to the sharks. He is just a bitter old man trying to teach us a lesson." "He is not bluffing," Jamal cried. I looked in his eyes. "He is done with us. He tore up the loan papers. He threw me out of his office. He said I have 2 kidneys so I can pay them back. Do you understand what that means? It means we are dead." I leaned back in my chair listening to my son fall apart. It was tragic, but it was necessary. He needed to feel the fire to understand that he shouldn't play with matches. "So fix it," Brittany snapped. "You are the man, right? Go drive Uber. Go sell your plasma. Do whatever you have to do. Stop whining to me about it. I have my own problems. I lost my job. I lost my reputation. The internet hates me. Because you threw the soup," Jamal roared. "Why did you do that? Why couldn't you just keep your mouth shut? We had a free house. We had his credit cards. We had everything, but you had to throw the soup. You had to humiliate him." "He disrespected me," Brittany said, her voice dripping with venom. "He acted like he owned the place." "He does own the place," Jamal screamed. "He owns everything. The house, the cars, the clothes on your back. He owns us, Brittany. And you spit in his face. You burned the golden goose, and now we are starving." There was a sound of movement. A slap, sharp and loud. "Do not yell at me," Brittany said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I am the only reason you have a spine, Jamal. Without me, you would still be Daddy's little boy working in the mailroom. I gave you ambition." "Ambition," Jamal laughed, a hysterical broken sound. "You gave me a death sentence. We have nothing, no money, no home, no family. We have Leo," Brittany said. "Do not bring him into this," Jamal said. "My dad. He mentioned Leo. He asked who would take care of him." I sat up straighter. This was the pivot. "Exactly," Brittany said. "We have Leo, and we have the law." "What are you talking about?" Jamal asked, confused. Brittany let out a long exhale of smoke. "Otis is old Jamal. He is 72. He has been acting erratic. He disappeared for 5 days. He threw hot soup on himself." "He didn't throw it, you did," Jamal interrupted. "Shut up," Brittany snapped. "Listen to me. The story is that he threw it. He is confused. He is violent. He is suffering from dementia. That is why he kicked us out. That is why he froze the accounts. He is not in his right mind." I looked at Henderson. He was taking furious notes. "So what?" Jamal asked. "So we sue him," Brittany said. "We file for emergency guardianship. We tell the court that he is a danger to himself and others. We tell them he is squandering the family estate. If we get guardianship, Jamal, we get control. We get control of the trust. We get control of the bank accounts. We get control of the penthouse." Jamal was silent for a long time. That is evil," he whispered. "He isn't crazy, Brittany. He is sharper than both of us combined." "It doesn't matter what he is," Brittany said. "It matters what we can prove. And I know a lawyer who can prove anything for the right price." I watched the audio waveform spike. She was making a call. "Who are you calling?" Jamal asked. "Go get ice for the cooler," Brittany ordered, dismissing him. "I need to handle this." I heard the door open and close. Jamal was gone. He was weak. He walked away when things got hard, just like he walked away from me. Brittany was alone in the room. I heard her punching numbers into the keypad. "Hello?" A male voice answered. It was smooth, slick like oil on pavement. "Hey, baby," Brittany said. Her voice changed instantly. It wasn't the shrewish tone she used with Jamal. It was sultry. It was seductive. It was the voice of a woman talking to a lover. I tightened my grip on the desk. Henderson looked up, his eyes wide. "Hey, beautiful," the man said. "I saw the video. You look intense." "It is a nightmare," Brittany said. "The old bastard kicked us out. He cut off the money. Jamal is useless. He is crying in the corner. I need you. Mark." I knew that name. Mark Sterling. A personal injury lawyer who advertised on the back of buses. A man with a reputation for chasing ambulances and winning settlements by burying the opposition in paperwork. I told you he was going to snap eventually, Mark said. What is the play? Plan B, Brittany said. We need to file for conservatorship. Immediately. Tomorrow morning. I need you to draft the petition, citing rapid cognitive decline, violent outbursts, and financial mismanagement. Financial mismanagement. Mark laughed. The guy built a logistics empire. He is spending it all. Brittany lied. He is staying in a penthouse. He is hiring security teams. He is burning through the inheritance, Mark. If we do not stop him, there will be nothing left for us. Us. Not her and Jamal, her and Mark. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. She wasn't just cheating on my son. She was planning to replace him with the man she was using to steal my money. I can have the papers ready by 9 a.m., Mark said. But we need a doctor. We need someone to sign an affidavit stating he is incompetent. I have Dr. Evans, Brittany said. He owes me a favor. He will sign whatever I put in front of him, good, Mark said. And Jamal, is he on board? He will do what he is told, Brittany said dismissively. He is terrified of his father and he is terrified of the loan sharks. I will tell him it is the only way to pay off the debt. He will sign. You are dangerous, Brittany, Mark purred. I love it. I love you too, baby, she said. Just get this done. Once we have the power of attorney, we can liquidate the assets, we can pay off your alimony, we can go to Cabo. Just you and me. And Leo, Mark asked. He can go to boarding school, Brittany said without hesitation. He is annoying me lately anyway. He keeps asking for his grandpa. I slammed my fist onto the desk. The sound made Henderson jump. She was going to send my grandson away. She was going to steal my empire, abandon my son, and run off with a cheap lawyer using my money. Get the guardianship filed first, Mark said. We need an emergency hearing. We will catch the old man off guard. He won't even know what hit him until the sheriff shows up to take him to the psych ward. He thinks he is so smart, Brittany said, laughing softly. He thinks he won because he locked the door. He doesn't realize I have a key to the back window. I ended the connection. I pulled the headset off and threw it onto the desk. Henderson was staring at me, his face pale. She is having an affair, Henderson said, and she is conspiring to commit fraud. And kidnapping, essentially. Taking your grandson. I stood up and walked to the window. The city lights were blurring. My head was pounding. I knew she was a snake, I said, my voice low. I didn't know she was a viper. Henderson stood up. We have the recording, Otis. We can go to the police. This is conspiracy. This is fraud. No, I said, turning around. Not yet. Henderson looked confused. Why not? She is coming for you, Otis. She is filing for guardianship tomorrow. If she gets a corrupt judge or a lazy one, she could freeze your assets before we can stop it. She could put you in a facility. Let her try, I said. I walked back to the desk and looked at the laptop. The waveform was flat, now silent. She wants a hearing, I said. She wants to stand in front of a judge and say I am crazy. She wants to say I am unfit. I smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who just saw a rabbit step into a trap. I will give her a hearing, Henderson. I will give her the biggest audience she has ever had. Let her file the papers, I said. Let her get Mark Sterling to draft his lies. Let her drag Dr. Evans into this. Let her build her house of cards as high as she wants. But Otis. Because when we get to court, Henderson, I said, cutting him off, I am going to play that tape, not to the police, to the judge. In open court, with Jamal sitting right there next to her. I wanted Jamal to hear it. I wanted him to hear his wife calling him useless. I wanted him to hear her plotting to leave him. I wanted him to hear her trading his son for a trip to Cabo. I wanted to break him completely so I could maybe build him back up again. But first I had to protect Leo. She said Leo was annoying her. I said, my voice trembling with rage. She said she would send him away. Henderson nodded. That is what she said. Get the private investigator back on the line, I said. I want eyes on my grandson. 24/7. If she so much as raises her voice at him, I want to know. And Henderson, I added. Yes, sir. Find out everything you can about Mark Sterling. I want to know where he went to law school. I want to know who he owes money to. I want to know his shoe size. If he is going to come after the king, he better not miss. Henderson closed his laptop. I will get to work. I sat alone in the office again. The silence was heavy. My family wasn't just broken. It was rotten. Rotten to the core. Brittany was the disease, but Jamal, Jamal was the host who let it spread. Tomorrow they would try to declare me insane. Tomorrow they would try to take my freedom, but they didn't know I was listening. They didn't know I was 5 moves ahead. I touched the burn on my face. It was starting to scab over. It was turning into a scar. Good. I wanted the scar. I wanted to remember. I poured the water from my glass into the plant on the desk. Grow, I whispered. Because tomorrow we were going to do some pruning. The silence in the penthouse was usually my sanctuary, but tonight it felt like a prison cell. I stood by the window looking down at the city lights, wondering where in that sprawl of concrete and neon my grandson was sleeping. Leo. He was 5 years old. He liked dinosaurs and chocolate milk, and he had a laugh that could make you forget that your knees hurt and your heart was tired. He was the only innocent thing in this entire war, and I knew with a sickening certainty that they were going to use him against me. My phone rang. It wasn't a standard call. It was a FaceTime request from Jamal. I stared at the screen. My hand hovered over the green button. I knew I shouldn't answer. I knew it was a trap. But the thought of seeing Leo's face even for a second was a lure I couldn't resist. I was a general in this war, but I was also a grandfather, and that was my only weakness. I tapped accept. The screen filled with the grainy image of the motel room. The walls were a peeling beige, the lighting was harsh fluorescent, and there sitting on the edge of the lumpy mattress was Leo. He looked small. He looked scared. He was wearing his favorite pajamas, the ones with the T-Rex on the front, but they looked dirty. "Hi, Grandpa," Leo whispered, his voice trembling. My heart broke into 1,000 jagged pieces. "Hi there, big man," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to smile through the pain. "Are you okay? I miss you," Grandpa Leo said. "Mommy says you are mad at us. Mommy says you do not want to see me anymore." Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. They were poisoning him. They were twisting his little mind. "No, Leo," I said, leaning closer to the phone. "That is not true. Grandpa loves you more than anything in the world. I am coming to get you, okay?" Before Leo could answer, the phone was snatched away. The camera spun wildly for a second before settling on Brittany's face. She looked haggard. Her eyes were bloodshot and she was holding a plastic cup filled with cheap wine, but her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Say goodbye to Grandpa Leo," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Grandpa is busy counting his money." She pushed Leo out of the frame. I heard him start to cry in the background. A low, hopeless sound that tore through my soul. "Brittany," I growled, my voice dropping an octave, "if you hurt him—" "Relax, Otis," she interrupted, taking a sip of her wine. "He is fine. For now. But motels are dangerous places for little boys, aren't they? There are drug dealers in the parking lot. There are needles on the ground. It is no place for a child." "Then let him come to me," I said, gripping the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. "Send him here. I will take care of him. You can stay in the motel. Just give me the boy." Brittany laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. "Oh, you would like that, wouldn't you? You want to play the hero. You want to steal my son like you stole our house." "I didn't steal anything," I said. "I took back what was mine, and Leo is mine," she hissed. "He is my property, Otis, and if you want access to my property, you have to pay the rent." I looked at Jamal. He was sitting in the corner of the frame, head in his hands, refusing to look at the camera. He was letting this happen. He was letting her use his son as a bargaining chip. "What do you want?" I asked, though I already knew. $5 million, Brittany said. "Cash. Wire transfer. Tonight." "You are insane," I said. $5 million, she repeated. "That is the price of admission, Otis. You put $5 million in the offshore account, the one I know you can access, and you can see Leo on weekends. You do not pay and you never see him again. I will move. I will change my name. I will take him somewhere you will never find him. You are blackmailing me with my own grandson," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "I am negotiating," Brittany said. "You taught Jamal that business is war, right? Well, this is business. You have the gold, but I have the asset." She turned the camera back to Leo for a split second, just long enough for me to see the tears streaming down his face. "Bye, Grandpa," Leo sobbed. Click. The screen went black. I sat there in the silence of the penthouse, my chest heaving. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. $5 million. It wasn't about the money. I had the money. I could wire it in 5 minutes, but I knew Brittany. If I paid her $5 million, she would be back next month asking for 10, and she would still keep Leo in that filth. She would still poison him against me. Money wouldn't save him. Money would just fund her addiction and her cruelty. I stood up and paced the room. I felt trapped. I felt helpless. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt old. I poured myself a glass of water, but my hand shook so bad I spilled it on the floor. I needed to see. I needed to know he was safe. I walked over to the laptop where Henderson had set up the surveillance feed. The audio bug on Brittany's phone was still active, but I had also had the private investigator install a pinhole camera in the motel room door earlier that day while they were out. It was illegal. It was inadmissible in court. But I didn't care about court right now. I cared about Leo. I pulled up the feed. The room was a disaster zone. Fast food wrappers covered the floor. Empty wine bottles lined the dresser. Brittany was sitting on the bed drinking from the plastic cup. She was ignoring Leo, who was sitting on the floor playing with a broken toy car. I watched as Brittany finished the wine and threw the cup at the wall. "Stop crying," she yelled at Leo. "God, you are so annoying. You are just like your grandfather, always whining." Leo flinched. He curled into a ball, making himself small. "I am hungry, Mommy," he whispered. "We do not have any food," Brittany snapped. "Your grandfather starved us. Go to sleep." I watched her stumble to the mini fridge, pull out another bottle of wine, and crack it open. She wasn't just mean, she was drunk. She was slurring her words, stumbling. She was in no condition to care for a goldfish, let alone a 5-year-old boy. And Jamal, my son, was sitting on the only chair in the room, staring blankly at the TV. He didn't even look at Leo when he said he was hungry. He was broken. He had checked out. I watched for an hour. I saw Brittany pass out on the bed, fully clothed. I saw Leo crawl under the thin motel blanket, shivering. I saw a cockroach scuttle across the nightstand. That was it. That was the line. They thought they had leverage. They thought they had a hostage. They forgot that I wasn't just a rich man. I was a man who knew how to use the system. I picked up my phone. I didn't call the bank. I didn't call the wire transfer department. I called Henderson. "Wake up," I said. "Otis, it is midnight." Henderson groaned. "I do not care," I said. "Get your coat. We are calling CPS." There was a silence on the line. Then the sound of Henderson sitting up. "Child Protective Services," he asked, his voice sharp. "Otis, that is the nuclear option. If you call them, they will take Leo. They will put him in foster care. Not if I have temporary emergency custody lined up," I said. "You need cause," Otis Henderson said. "You need proof of immediate danger. You cannot just say they are poor. Being broke isn't a crime. I have proof," I said, staring at the screen. "I have proof of neglect. I have proof of substance abuse. I have proof of an unsafe environment." "But the surveillance footage," Henderson argued. "It is illegal. We cannot use it. We do not need to show them the video," I said. "We just need to tell them where to look. I will send the private investigator to the motel. He can testify to what he hears through the door. He can testify to the screaming. He can testify to the smell of alcohol." And I added, my voice breaking, "I have the FaceTime call. They tried to sell him, Henderson. They tried to sell a child for $5 million. That is trafficking. That is endangerment," Otis Henderson said softly. "If you do this, Jamal will never forgive you. Taking his child, that is the end. There is no coming back from that." I looked at the screen. I looked at Leo shivering under that thin blanket while his mother passed out drunk and his father ignored him. "He is not a father," I said. "He is a spectator, and I am done watching. Make the call, Henderson. Call the emergency hotline. Tell them there is a 5-year-old child in imminent danger at the Motel 6 off I-20. Tell them the mother is intoxicated and the father is non-responsive. Tell them there are no consumables in the room. Tell them everything." I hung up. I sat there in the dark watching the screen. I felt like a traitor. I felt like a monster. Calling the state on your own family, it goes against every instinct in your blood. You handle things in-house. You protect your own. But Leo was my own. And Jamal and Brittany, they were the wolves at the door. 10 minutes later, I saw the blue lights flash through the motel curtains on the video feed. Brittany woke up groggy and confused. "What is that?" she slurred. Someone banged on the door. Heavy authoritative knocks. Child Protective Services opened the door. Jamal jumped up, panic in his eyes. He looked around the room, seeing the bottles, seeing the trash, seeing the squalor through the eyes of a stranger for the first time. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh God, Brittany, hide the wine." It was too late. The door opened. 2 police officers and a social worker stepped in. The social worker, a stern woman with a clipboard, took one look at the room, one look at the passed-out mother, one look at the hungry child, and her face went hard as stone. Brittany started screaming, "You cannot come in here. This is harassment. Do you know who my father-in-law is?" "We received a report of child neglect," the social worker said, calm but firm. "Ma'am, you appear to be intoxicated." "I am not drunk," Brittany shrieked, lunging at the woman. One of the cops caught her holding her back. I watched as they woke Leo up. He looked terrified. He looked around for his parents, but they were too busy fighting the cops to comfort him. Then the social worker knelt down. She said something to him. I couldn't hear it, but I saw Leo nod. He reached up and took her hand. They led him out of the room. He was clutching his T-Rex pajamas. He looked back once at his parents. Brittany was being handcuffed for assaulting an officer. Jamal was crying in the corner. They took him. I closed the laptop. I put my head in my hands and I wept. I wept for the boy who had to live through that. I wept for the son I had lost. I wept because I knew I had just saved my grandson, but I had destroyed what was left of my family to do it. But then my phone rang. It was Henderson. "They have him, Otis. He is in emergency protective custody. The social worker is on her way to the penthouse. We filed the emergency petition. Since you are the next of kin and you have a safe home, they are bringing him to you." I wiped my eyes. I stood up. "Bring him home, Henderson," I said. I walked to the kitchen. I started heating up some milk. I found a box of chocolate powder in the back of the pantry. I got out the special mug, the one with the superhero on it that I kept just for him. I wasn't a general anymore. I wasn't a CEO. I was a grandpa making hot chocolate for a boy who had had a very bad night. The war wasn't over. Brittany would fight. Jamal would hate me. But tonight, Leo was going to sleep in a soft bed. He was going to eat. And he was going to be safe. And that was worth $5 million. That was worth everything. The courtroom smelled like floor wax and old lies. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Henderson, my hands folded on top of the mahogany surface. Across the aisle, Brittany and Jamal huddled with Mark Sterling, the ambulance chaser Brittany was sleeping with. They looked like a trio of vultures waiting for a carcass. Brittany was wearing a modest gray dress I had never seen before, probably bought at a thrift store specifically for this occasion. She wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She was playing the role of the grieving, destitute mother to perfection. Jamal looked worse. He was wearing a suit that was 2 sizes too big for him now that he had lost 10 pounds from stress in the last week. He wouldn't look at me. He kept staring at the judge's empty chair, his leg bouncing up and down like a piston. The bailiff called out, "All rise." Judge Marilyn Stone walked in. She was a woman in her 60s with eyes that had seen every variety of human misery and had no patience for any of it. She sat down, arranged her robes, and looked over her glasses at us. "This is an emergency hearing regarding the custody of Leo King," she said, her voice dry as dust. "We are here to determine immediate temporary placement. Let us keep this brief and factual." Mark Sterling stood up, buttoning his cheap jacket. He flashed a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. "We are here because a wealthy, vindictive man is using his fortune to steal a child from his loving mother. My client, Mrs. Brittany King, is a victim of domestic financial abuse. Mr. Otis King evicted her without notice, froze her assets, and is now holding her son hostage to punish her." Brittany let out a perfectly timed sob. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I just want my baby back," she whispered loud enough for the microphone to catch. "He is only 5. He needs his mother." Judge Stone looked at me, then back at Sterling. "Continue, Mr. King has a history of erratic behavior," Sterling said, waving a hand in my direction. "He claims to have dementia when it suits him, and then claims to be a genius when he wants to control the family. He calls CPS with false reports. He uses his influence to terrorize this young couple. We are asking for the immediate return of Leo King to his parents and a restraining order against Mr. Otis King." It was a good performance. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed it. Sterling was painting a picture of a poor young family crushed by a tyrannical patriarch. Henderson stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't use flowery language. He just looked like the granite wall of the law. "Your Honor," Henderson said, "we are not here to discuss real estate or bank accounts. We are here to discuss the safety of a 5-year-old boy. The evidence will show that Mr. and Mrs. King are currently unfit to care for a goldfish, let alone a child." Sterling jumped up. "Objection. Hearsay. Overruled, Judge Stone said. Call your first witness, Mr. Henderson. We call Brittany King to the stand. Brittany walked up to the witness box. She looked fragile. She looked like a porcelain doll that had been dropped. She swore to tell the truth and sat down, clutching her tissue. Mrs. King Henderson asked, "Where were you 2 nights ago when CPS removed your son from your custody?" "I was at a motel," Brittany said, her voice trembling, "because Otis kicked us out of our home." "And what were you doing when the officers arrived?" Henderson asked. "I was sleeping," Brittany said. "I was exhausted from crying. The police report says you were unconscious," Henderson said, reading from a document. "It says you had a blood alcohol level of 0.18. That is more than double the legal driving limit." "Were you drunk, Mrs. King, while your son was hungry in the same room?" "I had a glass of wine to calm my nerves." Brittany snapped her mask, slipping for a second. "I was under extreme duress." "And the bruises on your son's arm?" Henderson asked. "The report notes older bruising consistent with grabbing." Brittany's eyes went wide. "Leo plays rough. He falls down. How dare you insinuate I would hurt him? I am a good mother." She looked at the judge, tears streaming down her face again. "Your Honor, please," she begged. "I love my son. Otis is lying. He pays people to lie for him. He buys everyone." Henderson sat down. No further questions. Sterling didn't even cross-examine. He knew Brittany was a loose cannon. Instead, he tried to call Jamal, but Jamal was shaking so badly he couldn't even stand up. Sterling whispered something to him, and Jamal just shook his head, muttering to himself. "Your Honor," Sterling said, "the parents are clearly traumatized, but trauma does not equal unfitness." "We move to dismiss." "Not yet," Henderson said, standing up again. "We have one more witness, Your Honor. A witness who has lived in the King household for the last 2 years. Brittany frowned. "Who? We didn't have anyone living with us except Otis." Henderson opened the courtroom door. "We call Maria Gonzalez." Brittany gasped. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Her hand flew to her mouth. Jamal finally looked up, and his face went from pale to ghostly white. Maria walked in. She was a small woman in her 50s wearing a simple Sunday dress. She walked with her head high. She walked past Brittany without looking at her. She walked past Jamal, who was now shrinking into his chair. She took the stand. Maria Henderson asked, "Can you tell the court how you know the defendants?" "I was the nanny," Maria said. Her voice was strong. "I worked for Mrs. Brittany for 2 years. I took care of Leo since he was 3. "And why did you leave your employment?" Henderson asked. "I didn't leave," Maria said, looking directly at Brittany. "She fired me 3 months ago. She said she needed the money for a new car. She still owes me 4 weeks of wages." Brittany stood up. "She is lying. She stole silver from the house. That is why I fired her." "Sit down, Mrs. King," Judge Stone barked, slamming her gavel. "One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt." Brittany sat down, seething. Maria Henderson continued. "During your time in the house, did you observe Mrs. King's parenting?" "Every day," Maria said. "Mrs. Brittany didn't like Leo to be in the same room as her. She said he was loud. She said he ruined her vibe. She would lock him in his bedroom for hours at a time. She called it quiet time, but she would leave him there without food or water while she drank wine by the pool." The courtroom was silent. I watched Brittany. She wasn't crying anymore. She was staring at Maria with pure hatred. "Did you ever see her strike the child?" Henderson asked. "Yes," Maria said softly. "Once Leo spilled juice on her white carpet. She slapped him so hard his nose bled. When I tried to help him, she told me to leave it. She said he needed to learn a lesson, and Mr. Jamal King Henderson asked, "Did he intervene?" Maria shook her head sadly. Mr. Jamal was usually in his office playing video games. When I told him what happened, he just said, "Listen to your mother, Leo." He never stood up for the boy, not once. "Thank you," Maria Henderson said. Sterling tried to cross-examine. He tried to claim Maria was a disgruntled employee looking for a payout. He asked about her immigration status. He asked if I was paying her. Maria looked him dead in the eye. "Mr. Otis paid my back wages yesterday, yes," she said, "because a man pays his debts. But I am not here for money. I am here because I love that little boy. And I know that if he goes back to that woman, she will break his spirit just like she broke his father's." Sterling had nothing. He sat down defeated. Judge Stone didn't need to deliberate. She didn't need a recess. She looked at Brittany, then she looked at Jamal. "Stand up," she ordered. They stood up. Jamal was swaying like a tree in a storm. Based on the testimony of the independent witness and the report from Child Protective Services regarding the incident at the motel, I am granting immediate temporary sole custody to Mr. Otis King, the judge said. Brittany let out a screech. "No, you can't. He is my son." Furthermore, Judge Stone continued, raising her voice over Brittany's screaming, "I am issuing a temporary restraining order. Neither parent is to come within 500 feet of Leo King or his legal guardian. Visitation is suspended pending a full psychological evaluation of both parents and a substance abuse screening for the mother." "You are stealing my child," Brittany yelled, lunging toward the bench. The bailiff stepped in front of her, pushing her back. "This is a fix. You are all on his payroll." Jamal just stood there. He was vibrating. He was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. He looked at me. I was sitting calmly, looking back at him. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't gloating. I was just watching the inevitable consequence of his cowardice. Something inside Jamal snapped. It wasn't a clean break. It was a violent explosion. The pressure of the last week, the loss of the house, the fear of the loan sharks, the humiliation of the soup, it all boiled over. But he couldn't attack me. I was too far away. I was too big. I was the mountain he couldn't move. So he attacked the person standing next to me. He lunged at Henderson. It happened so fast. 1 second Jamal was standing there, the next he was flying across the aisle screaming a primal sound of pure rage. "You did this!" Jamal shrieked. "You ruined my life! You poisoned him against me!" He tackled Henderson, knocking the older lawyer to the floor. Henderson's briefcase flew open, papers scattering everywhere. Jamal was on top of him, punching wildly, his fists connecting with Henderson's shoulder, his chest, his face. "Stop it! Stop!" Henderson yelled, trying to cover his head. I stood up shouting for the bailiffs, but they were already moving. 3 of them jumped on Jamal, pulling him off Henderson. They slammed him face first into the carpet. "Get off me!" Jamal screamed, thrashing against the weight of 3 grown men. "I will kill you! I will kill all of you!" Brittany was screaming in the background, hysterically, backing away as if she didn't know who this man was. The bailiffs cuffed Jamal, dragging him to his feet. His nose was bleeding from hitting the floor. His suit was torn. He looked like a wild animal caught in a trap. "Take him to holding," Judge Stone shouted, banging her gavel so hard it sounded like a gunshot. "Mr. Sterling, control your client." I walked over to Henderson. He was sitting up, adjusting his glasses. His lip was cut and his tie was crooked, but he nodded at me. "I am fine, Otis," he wheezed. "I am fine." I looked at Jamal as they dragged him out the side door. He twisted his head back to look at me one last time. His eyes were wide, filled with madness and tears. "Dad!" he screamed. "Dad, help me!" The door slammed shut, cutting off his voice. The courtroom was silent again, save for Brittany's sobbing. She was alone now. Her lawyer was gathering his papers, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Her husband was in a cell. Her son was gone. I walked over to her. I stood in front of the defense table. She looked up at me, her mascara running down her face in black rivers. "You won," she whispered. "Are you happy, Otis? You destroyed your family. Are you happy?" I looked down at her. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel joy. I felt the heavy weight of duty. "I didn't destroy my family, Brittany," I said. "I saved the only part of it that was worth saving." I turned my back on her. "Let's go, Henderson," I said. "We have a boy to pick up." We walked out of the courtroom, leaving Brittany sitting alone in the wreckage of her own making. The air in the hallway was cool. My hands were steady. I had Leo. That was all that mattered. The rest of them could burn. The rain had been hammering against the roof of the old colonial house for 3 hours straight, a relentless rhythm that usually helped me sleep. But tonight, I was wide awake, sitting in the wingback chair in the corner of the living room, shrouded in total darkness. On my lap rested the cold steel of my old Remington 870 shotgun. It was unloaded, but Jamal did not need to know that. Beside me on the small side table was a single round of buckshot standing upright like a soldier. I was waiting for my son. Henderson had called me at 6 p.m. Jamal had made bail. Mark Sterling, the slimy lawyer, had pulled some strings, likely hoping that if Jamal was free, he could somehow get access to my money to pay his legal fees. But Henderson also told me something else. The word on the street was that Volkov, the Russian loan shark, had given Jamal a 24-hour deadline. Pay the $500,000 or lose a limb. Desperation makes men do stupid things. It makes them dangerous. I knew Jamal. I knew how his mind worked when he was cornered. He wouldn't run to Mexico. He didn't have the courage. He wouldn't turn himself into the police for protection. He didn't have the humility. He would come here. He knew I was staying at the old house with Leo. I had moved us out of the penthouse temporarily because Leo missed his backyard and I wanted him to feel grounded. Jamal knew the layout of this house better than anyone. He knew where the safe was behind the painting in the study. He knew about the collection of vintage Patek Philippe watches I had spent 40 years acquiring. Watches worth enough to pay off Volkov and buy a ticket to nowhere. I checked the baby monitor sitting on the floor by my feet. Leo was fast asleep upstairs, dreaming of dinosaurs and safety. I had sent the private security team to the perimeter of the property, telling them to stand down unless they heard a gunshot. I needed to do this myself. This was between a father and a son. I had turned off the alarm system. I had unlocked the back kitchen door. I had set the stage. It was a trap and my own flesh and blood was walking right into it. At 3:15 in the morning, I heard the sound. It was the faint creak of the third step on the back porch. I knew that creak. I had fixed that step when Jamal was 10 years old, teaching him how to hold the hammer. He had held the flashlight for me, his eyes wide with admiration. Now he was stepping on it to rob me. The kitchen door opened with a soft whine. I heard the wet shuffle of sneakers on the linoleum. He was inside. I sat perfectly still. My breathing was shallow, controlled. I merged with the shadows. I listened to him move through the kitchen. He was breathing hard, ragged gasps that sounded like a wounded animal. He bumped into a chair and cursed under his breath. He moved into the hallway. The floorboards groaned. He was heading for the study. He was heading for the money. But then he stopped. He turned toward the living room. Maybe he sensed something. Maybe he just wanted to see if the old man was asleep on the couch. He stepped into the room. A flash of lightning illuminated him for a split second, and what I saw broke my heart all over again. He was soaking wet, shivering. His clothes were torn. He had a black eye, probably a down payment from Volkov's men. But it was what was in his hand that made my grip tighten on the shotgun. A kitchen knife. 8 inches of serrated steel. He wasn't just here to rob me. He was prepared to silence me. If I woke up, if I tried to stop him, he was ready to use it. The boy I raised. The boy I drove to soccer practice. He was standing in my living room holding a knife, thinking about ending my life to save his own. I waited until he was 5 feet away. "Hello, Jamal," I said. My voice was low, calm, gravelly. It cut through the darkness like a physical force. Jamal jumped his skin, practically trying to leave his body. He spun around, slashing the knife through the air in a blind panic. "Who is there?" he screamed, his voice cracking. I reached out and clicked the lamp on. The sudden yellow light blinded him. He threw his hand up to shield his eyes, the knife still clutched tight in his fist. I sat there, the shotgun resting easily across my knees, my finger outside the trigger guard. I looked him up and down. He looked like a nightmare. He looked like death. "Dad," he whispered, blinking rapidly. "Put the knife down, son," I said. Jamal looked at the knife, then at me, then at the shotgun. He didn't drop it. He gripped it tighter, his knuckles turning white. I need the watches, Dad," he said, his voice trembling. "I need them. They are going to kill me. Volkov, he sent guys. They know I am out. They are waiting. So you came to rob me," I said. "You came to steal from the man who gave you life. I don't have a choice." He yelled, taking a step toward me. "I need the money. Just give me the combination. Open the safe and I will leave. I swear I will never come back. And if I say no," I asked. I nodded at the knife in his hand. "Are you going to use that, Jamal? Are you going to stab your father for a Rolex?" Jamal looked at the blade. He was shaking so hard the tip of the knife was vibrating. Sweat and rain were dripping down his face, mixing with the tears that were starting to form. "Do not make me do it, Dad," he begged. "Just give me the money. You have so much. You have millions. Why do you care about some stupid watches?" "It is my life, Dad. They are going to kill me." "Your life is already over, Jamal," I said. "You ended it the minute you walked through that door with a weapon." I picked up the shotgun. The sound of the metal shifting against the fabric of my trousers was loud in the quiet room. I racked the slide. Clack, clack. The sound was unmistakable. It is the universal language of stop. Jamal froze. He stared down the barrel of the gun. It was pointed at his chest. "Dad!" He whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Dad, would you shoot me?" I looked at him. I looked at the son I had loved for 35 years. I looked at the entitlement, the weakness, the cruelty that had consumed him. I saw the soup hitting my face. I saw Leo crying in the motel room. I saw the forgery. And now I saw the knife. I am not shooting my son. I said, my voice devoid of any warmth, any love, any hesitation. I aimed the shotgun slightly higher, centering it on his heart. I am shooting an intruder. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I meant them. In that moment, he wasn't Jamal. He wasn't my boy. He was a threat to Leo. He was a threat to my peace. He was a rabid dog that needed to be put down. Jamal saw it in my eyes. He saw the resolve. He saw that the bank of forgiveness was closed and the vault was empty. He dropped the knife. It clattered onto the hardwood floor, echoing like a dropped coin. Jamal collapsed. He fell to his knees, sobbing, burying his face in his hands. "I can't," he wailed. "I can't do it. I am scared, Dad. I am so scared. Help me. Please help me." I stood up, keeping the gun trained on him. I walked over and kicked the knife away, sending it skittering under the sofa. I looked down at the broken man on my floor. He wanted me to pick him up. He wanted me to tell him it would be okay. He wanted me to write a check and make the bad men go away. But I wasn't that father anymore. That father died when the soup hit his face. "I am helping you," I said. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I dialed 3 digits. 911. "Dad, no," Jamal gasped, looking up. "Not the cops. Volkov, he has guys inside. If I go to jail, I am dead." "Then you better hope they put you in solitary," I said. 911. "What is your emergency?" the operator asked. "My name is Otis King," I said, keeping my eyes on Jamal. "I have an intruder in my home. He is armed with a knife. I have him held at gunpoint. Send the police." Jamal screamed, a sound of pure betrayal. "You are killing me. You are sending me to die." I hung up the phone. "You broke into my house, Jamal," I said. "You threatened me. That is burglary and assault with a deadly weapon." "I didn't touch you," he shouted. "You held a knife to your father," I said. "That is enough." I walked back to the chair and sat down. I didn't offer him water. I didn't offer him a towel. I just sat there with the shotgun across my lap, watching him cry, watching him fall apart, watching the last remnants of our relationship dissolve into the puddle of rainwater on the floor. The sirens started in the distance. They were getting louder fast. I had probably triggered a silent alarm for the police chief himself when I made the call. Jamal tried to stand up. I racked the shotgun again, ejecting the unspent shell I had chambered earlier. It hit the floor with a hollow thud. I loaded the live round from the table. "Stay down," I said. He stayed down. We waited in silence. The rain pounded on the roof. My heart was breaking, but my hand was steady. I was doing what had to be done. I was cutting out the rot. When the blue lights flashed through the front window, painting the living room in strobes of azure and black, Jamal looked at me one last time. "I hate you," he whispered. "I know, son," I said. "I know." The front door burst open. Police officers swarmed in, guns drawn, shouting commands. "Drop the weapon, police." I placed the shotgun on the floor and raised my hands. "He is over there," I said, nodding toward Jamal. They grabbed him. They slammed him against the wall, cuffing him roughly. They read him his rights. As they dragged him out past me, he didn't look at me again. He hung his head, defeated, broken. I watched him go. I watched my son leave my house in handcuffs. An officer approached me, lowering his weapon. "Mr. King, are you all right? Did he hurt you?" I looked at the empty doorway where my son had just vanished. No officer. I said, feeling a cold tear trace the scar on my cheek. "He didn't hurt me. He just reminded me who he is." I stood up. I needed to go check on Leo. I needed to make sure the innocent were still sleeping. The guilty were gone, and I was still standing. The flashing blue lights of the police cruisers reflected off the wet pavement like a disco ball in a nightmare. I stood on the porch of the old colonial house, my shotgun now resting safely in the corner, and watched as they shoved my son into the back of a squad car. He wasn't screaming anymore. He was just sobbing, a low, broken sound that barely carried over the noise of the rain and the crackle of police radios. One of the officers, a young man who looked like he had played football in high school, walked up the steps holding an evidence bag. Inside was the kitchen knife, 8 inches of stainless steel that my son had brought to end my life. "Mr. King," the officer said, his voice respectful but firm. "We have him in custody. We are charging him with burglary, armed criminal action, and assault. Given the circumstances and the weapon, we are also looking at attempted murder. Do you want to come down to the station to make a formal statement?" I looked at the bag. I looked at the knife. I remembered teaching Jamal how to chop vegetables with a plastic knife when he was 4 years old. "Yes," I said, "I will be there." I went back inside to check on Leo one last time. He was still sleeping safe in his bed, oblivious to the fact that his father had just tried to orphan him. I called the private security team back from the perimeter. I told them to stand guard inside the house. "Do not let anyone in," I ordered, "not even the Pope." Then I called Henderson. "Meet me at the precinct," I said. "Bring the file on Brittany." The police station was a concrete box that smelled of stale coffee and misery. It was 3 in the morning. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing buzz. I sat in the observation room, a small dark closet separated from the interrogation room by a pane of one-way glass. On the other side of the glass sat Jamal. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. They had taken his suit jacket and his tie. He was sitting at a metal table, his hands cuffed to a metal ring bolted to the floor. He was shaking. He looked like a child who had gotten lost in a department store, but there was no announcement coming to save him. Henderson stood next to me, his face grim. He didn't say a word. There was nothing to say. Detective Miller entered the interrogation room. He was a veteran cop, a man with gray hair and eyes that didn't blink much. He carried a file folder and a cup of water. He set the water down in front of Jamal. "Drink," Miller said. Jamal leaned forward and drank greedily, spilling water down his chin. He looked up at Miller, his eyes wide and bloodshot. "I want a lawyer," Jamal stammered. I want Mark Sterling." Miller laughed. It was a dry, dusty sound. "Mark Sterling is currently trying to explain to the Bar Association why he filed a frivolous guardianship petition based on perjured testimony. I do not think he is available, kid. Besides, you do not need a lawyer right now. You need a priest." "I didn't do anything," Jamal shouted. "I just went to talk to him." "You went to talk with a knife?" Miller asked, raising an eyebrow. "You broke into a house at 3 a.m. with a deadly weapon. We have the 911 call, Jamal. We have your father's statement. We have the knife with your prints on it. You are looking at 20 years minimum." "Unless—" Miller let the word hang in the air. He pulled out a chair and sat down facing Jamal. "Unless what?" Jamal whispered. "Unless you tell me whose idea it was," Miller said. I leaned closer to the glass. This was it. "What do you mean?" Jamal asked, sweating. "I mean," Miller said, leaning in, "that you are a soft kid, Jamal. I looked at your file. Private school, country club. You have never been in a fist fight in your life. And suddenly you turn into a ninja assassin breaking into houses. That doesn't track. Someone pushed you. Someone told you to go there tonight." Jamal looked down at the table. He was trembling so hard the handcuffs rattled against the metal ring. "Was it the loan sharks?" Miller asked. "Did Volkov send you?" "No," Jamal whispered. "Volkov just wanted the money." "Then who?" Miller pressed. "Who knew you were desperate? Who knew where your father was staying? Who told you that killing him was the only way out?" Jamal squeezed his eyes shut. Tears leaked out, running tracks through the grime on his face. "She told me it would be easy," he sobbed. "Who?" Miller asked, his voice soft, now coaxing. "Brittany," Jamal choked out. I felt a cold hand squeeze my heart. I knew it. Deep down I knew it. But hearing him say it, hearing him confirm that the mother of my grandson had sent a hitman, my own son, to kill me, was a different kind of pain. "Tell me exactly what she said," Miller said, opening his notebook. She was going crazy," Jamal said, the words spilling out of him like vomit. "After the guardianship hearing, she lost it. She said you beat us. She said we were going to lose everything. She said if Dad was still alive, we would never be safe." "Go on," Miller said. "We were in the car." Jamal continued. "She was driving. She said the only way to get the trust fund to unlock immediately was if the beneficiary died. She said if Dad died before he changed the will, I would still inherit. She said accidents happen all the time, so she told you to kill him," Miller clarified. "She said I had to be a man." Jamal cried. "She said Volkov was going to kill me anyway, so I had nothing to lose. She gave me the knife. It was from her mother's kitchen. She dropped me off at the corner. She said, do not come back until it is done." I closed my eyes. The image of Brittany sitting in a car waiting for her husband to murder his father, waiting to inherit my blood money. It was pure evil. It was Shakespearean in its tragedy. "And she knew you were going there tonight?" Miller asked. "She drove me," Jamal screamed. "She is waiting at the Waffle House down the street. She said she needed an alibi." Miller stood up. He walked to the door and opened it. He looked at the uniformed officer standing guard. "Get a patrol car to the Waffle House on Main," Miller ordered. "Pick up Brittany King. Bring her in for conspiracy to commit murder." Miller walked back to the table. He looked down at Jamal. "You are going to prison, son," Miller said. "But because you gave us the mastermind, maybe the DA will let you see the sun once in a while." Miller walked out of the room, leaving Jamal weeping on the metal table. The door to the observation room opened. Detective Miller walked in. He looked tired. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and respect. "Mr. King," Miller said, "you heard that." "I heard it," I said. My voice was steady, but it felt hollow. "We have enough for conspiracy," Miller said. "Solicitation of capital murder. With his testimony and the knife, we can put her away for life, and him too." He slid a piece of paper across the small table. It was the formal complaint, the document that would turn my son into a felon. "I need your signature," Mr. King, Miller said. "I need you to confirm that you want to press charges." I looked at the paper. It was just a piece of paper, but it was also a tombstone. It was the end of the King line. It was the end of the dream I had when I held Jamal for the first time in the hospital delivery room 35 years ago. I thought about that day. I thought about how small his hands were. I thought about the promise I made to protect him. But then I thought about the knife. I thought about Leo. I thought about the soup. I realized I had protected him from everything except himself, and by doing that I had created this. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy like a bar of lead. Henderson stepped forward. "Otis, if you sign that?" "I know, Henderson," I said. I looked through the glass one last time. Jamal was huddled over the table praying. He was praying for salvation. But salvation requires repentance, and he wasn't repenting. He was just bargaining. I pressed the pen to the paper. The ink flowed black and permanent. I signed my name, Otis King. I slid the paper back to Miller. "Lock them up," I said. Miller nodded. He took the paper. "I will get the warrant for Brittany immediately." Miller left the room. I stood there for a moment longer, watching my son. He looked up at the mirror. He couldn't see me, but he looked right at me. "Dad," he whispered. "Dad, please." I turned away. I walked out of the observation room. I walked out of the station. The rain had stopped. The air was cold and clean. Henderson walked beside me. "What now, Otis?" he asked. "Now," I said, buttoning my coat, "we finish it. Brittany is going to try to run. She is not the type to wait at a Waffle House when she sees police cars. She has a backup plan. She always has a backup plan." "You think she will flee?" Henderson asked. "I know she will," I said, "and I know exactly where she is going." I pulled out my phone. I dialed the private investigator. "Is the tracker still active on the Mercedes?" I asked. "Yes, sir," the PI answered. "She is moving fast. She is heading south on I-85. She is going to the airport," I said. "She is going to try to use that offshore account. Meet me at Hartsfield-Jackson," I told Henderson. "But the police are looking for her," Henderson said. "The police are slow," I said. "I am not." I got into the waiting car. "Drive," I said. We had one more rat to catch, and this one was fast. But I was the king, and this was my city. The international terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport is a city unto itself. It smells of jet fuel, duty-free perfume, and anxiety. I stood on the mezzanine level looking down at the sea of travelers. I was flanked by Henderson and two plainclothes FBI agents who looked like bored businessmen but moved like vipers. We were waiting for a ghost. My private investigator was right. Brittany wasn't at the Waffle House. She wasn't at the motel. She was here. She walked through the sliding glass doors at Terminal F 20 minutes after we arrived. She was wearing big sunglasses and a silk scarf wrapped around her head like a movie star from the 50s trying to stay incognito. But I knew that walk. It was the walk of entitlement. The walk of a woman who believes the ground should pave itself in gold before her feet touch it. She was dragging a large Louis Vuitton suitcase behind her. It looked heavy. It was heavy because it was stuffed with the last of the cash she had liquidated from her jewelry and whatever she had stolen from Jamal's hidden stash. She wasn't looking for Jamal. She wasn't looking for Leo. She was looking at the departure board. She headed straight for the first-class check-in counter for a flight to the Cayman Islands. I watched her from the balcony. My heart was cold. There was no pity left in me. She had tried to have me killed. She had tried to sell my grandson. She had destroyed my son. She was a cancer, and I was the surgeon. She walked up to the counter. I saw her flash a smile at the agent. It was that fake plastic smile she used on waiters and valets. She handed over her passport. I nodded to the FBI agent next to me. Agent Miller touched his earpiece. "It is time," he said. We watched. The ticket agent typed something into her computer. Then she stopped. She frowned. She typed again. She picked up the phone. I saw Brittany's body stiffen. She tapped her nails on the counter. She looked around nervously. She checked her phone. She was probably texting Mark Sterling, her lover and co-conspirator. She was probably asking him where he was. She probably thought he was meeting her at the gate with champagne. She didn't know that Mark wasn't coming. The ticket agent hung up the phone and looked at Brittany. I couldn't hear what she said, but I could read lips well enough. "There is a problem with your passport." Brittany started gesturing wildly. She pointed at her watch. She slammed her hand on the counter. She was making a scene. It was her default setting. When things don't go your way, scream until they do. But the airport isn't a restaurant. You can't send the soup back here. Two uniformed Customs and Border Protection officers stepped out from a door behind the counter. They walked up behind Brittany. One of them put a hand on her shoulder. She spun around. She tried to pull away. She tried to run. "But you don't run in heels pulling a 50-pound suitcase." She stumbled. The officers grabbed her arms. That was my cue. I walked down the stairs, Henderson trailing behind me. I walked slowly. I wanted her to see me coming. I wanted her to know exactly who had pulled the plug on her escape. She was screaming now, "Get off me! I am an American citizen. You cannot detain me. I have rights." Then she saw me. She froze. The officers were cuffing her hands behind her back, but she stopped fighting. She just stared at me. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Hello, Brittany," I said, stopping 10 feet away. "Going somewhere." "Otis," she gasped. Her face was pale beneath the bronzer. "Otis, tell them. Tell them this is a mistake. I am family. You stopped being family the moment you threw soup in my face," I said, "and you became my enemy the moment you told my son to kill me." She shook her head frantically. That is a lie. Jamal is lying. He is crazy. I never said that. I was going to get help. I was going to the Caymans to get money to help us. To help us, I repeated. Or to access the accounts of King Logistics International, the shell company you set up 6 months ago. Her eyes went wide. The terror was real now. I saw the look of total confusion on her face. She thought she was smart. She thought she had covered her tracks. She thought because I was an old trucker, I didn't know how to read a balance sheet. I stepped closer. "You thought I didn't know Brittany. You opened a consulting firm in the Cayman Islands. You used my social security number. You forged my signature on the incorporation documents, and then you started funneling money from Jamal's loans through it. You were laundering money, Brittany. Money stolen from loan sharks and money stolen from me." "I didn't," she shrieked. "That was Mark. Mark did that. He is the lawyer. He set it up." "Ah, yes," I said. "Mark." I pulled a folded piece of paper from my inside pocket. "You are looking for Mark Sterling, aren't you? You thought he was going to meet you here. You thought you two were going to fly off into the sunset and spend my money while I rotted in a grave." She didn't answer. She just stared at the paper. "Mark isn't coming," I said. "Mark is currently sitting in a conference room at the U.S. Attorney's office. He has been there for 3 hours. Brittany started to shake. "No. He loves me. He loves not going to federal prison," I said. I unfolded the paper. It was a copy of a plea deal. The ink was still fresh. "I paid Mark a visit yesterday, Brittany. Before Jamal broke into my house, I showed him the evidence I had on the fraud. The fake medical records, the shell company. I gave him a choice. He could go down with the ship or he could give me the captain. I held up the paper so she could see the signature. He chose himself," I said. "He gave us everything, Brittany. The ledger, the bank routing numbers, the text messages where you told him to make sure the fake will was ironclad. He sold you out to save his license and his freedom. He is the star witness against you." Brittany let out a sound that wasn't human. It was the wail of a dying animal. Her knees buckled and the officers had to hold her up. "He betrayed me," she sobbed. "He is a con man, Brittany," I said. "And you are a fool. You trusted a thief to hold your purse." The FBI agent stepped forward. "Brittany King, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." Brittany looked up at me one last time. Her eyes were black holes of hate. "I hope you die alone, old man," she hissed. "I hope you rot in that big house with no one to hold your hand." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had poisoned my family, who had turned my son into a criminal, who had tried to erase my legacy. "I won't be alone," I said. "I have Leo." And then I delivered the final blow. "And Brittany," I said, leaning in close so only she could hear. "I seized the account in the Caymans this morning. The money is gone. Mark transferred it back to the trust as part of his deal. You are broke. You have no lawyer, you have no husband, you have no son, and you have no money to buy canteen items in prison." Her face crumbled. The arrogance finally broke. She started to scream a raw, guttural sound of total defeat. "Take her away," I said to the agents. They dragged her through the terminal. People were staring, recording on their phones. She was kicking and screaming, her scarf falling off, revealing her messy hair, her expensive shoes dragging on the linoleum. It was the end of Brittany King. I stood there watching her go. I felt Henderson put a hand on my shoulder. "It is over, Otis," he said softly. "We got them all." I took a deep breath. The air in the terminal was recycled and stale, but it tasted clean to me. "It isn't over, Henderson," I said, turning away from the spectacle. "We still have to rebuild." I walked toward the exit. My step was lighter than it had been in years. I had cut off the dead weight. I had cauterized the wound. Now it was time to heal. I had a grandson waiting for me. I had a business to run. And I had a lot of soup to eat. But this time, I was going to make it myself. And it was going to taste like freedom. The ballroom of the Grand Marquis Hotel was transformed. Gone were the corporate banners and sterile lighting of the shareholder meetings I used to hold here. Tonight the room was bathed in warm gold light filled with the scent of lilies, my late wife's favorite flower, and the sound of a live jazz band playing soft, soulful tunes. It was a celebration, but it wasn't about me. It was about reclaiming the name King from the mud my son had dragged it through. I stood at the podium looking out at the sea of faces. There were no socialites here, no influencers, no people who judged you by your watch. The room was filled with the people who actually built this city. There was Old Man Jenkins, who ran the dispatch center for 30 years. There was Sarah, the head mechanic, who could strip a diesel engine blindfolded. There were the drivers, the warehouse workers, the people Jamal had called the help, and Brittany had refused to make eye contact with. They were my people, and tonight they were eating filet mignon on my dime. "Thank you all for coming," I said into the microphone. My voice was steady, the gravel of age mixed with the steel of resolve. Many of you know I've been away for a while. I was lost. I forgot who I was. I let myself become a ghost in my own life. A murmur of understanding went through the crowd. They knew. Rumors travel fast in our world. "But I'm back," I continued. "And I'm not just back to make money. I'm back to make a difference." I gestured to the large screen behind me. A photo of my wife Eleanor appeared. She was smiling, that warm, radiant smile that used to light up our small apartment when we had nothing but love and a dream. "Tonight I am proud to announce the launch of the Eleanor King Scholarship Fund," I said. "We are starting with an endowment of $10 million. This fund will pay for the college education of every child of every employee of King Logistics. No loans, no debt, just a future." The room erupted. People were cheering, crying, hugging each other. I saw Sarah wiping her eyes with a grease-stained handkerchief she kept in her pocket out of habit. This was legacy. This was power. Not a penthouse, not a black card, but the ability to change lives. I stepped down from the podium and was immediately surrounded. Hands shook mine, strong, calloused hands. People thanked me, shared stories of Eleanor, told me how much this meant to them. For the first time in 5 years, I felt at home. I wasn't the old man in the guest room. I was Otis. Henderson appeared at my elbow, looking uncharacteristically flustered. He leaned in close. "Otis," he whispered, "there's a situation at the service entrance." I frowned. What kind of situation? Did Brittany make bail? "No," Henderson said. "It's Jamal. He's out on bond pending trial. He's asking for you." I felt the warmth in the room drop a few degrees. "Tell him to leave, Henderson. I have nothing to say to him." "He refuses to go," Henderson said. "He says he won't cause a scene. He says he just wants 5 minutes. He looks bad, Otis." I looked around the room at the smiling faces, the hope, the joy. Then I thought about the knife. I thought about the soup. "Fine," I said, my voice hardening. "Bring him to the back alley. I won't have him stepping foot on this carpet." I excused myself and walked through the kitchen, the staff nodding respectfully as I passed. I stepped out into the cool night air of the loading dock. The alley was dimly lit, smelling of ozone and wet pavement. And there he was. Jamal was leaning against a dumpster. He was wearing jeans that were torn at the knees and a hoodie that looked like he'd slept in it for a week. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollowed out. The arrogance was gone, scraped away by the reality of a jail cell and the terror of loan sharks. He looked like a ghost of the son I once knew. When he saw me, he straightened up, trying to muster some shred of dignity, but he failed. He just looked broken. "Dad," he croaked. His voice was raspy. "Mr. King," I corrected. "You lost the right to call me Dad when you picked up that knife." Jamal flinched. He looked down at his dirty sneakers. I know I messed up. I know I deserve this." "You deserve prison," I said. "You deserve exactly what's coming to you. Why are you here, Jamal? Did you come to ask for money again? Because the answer is still no." "No," Jamal said quickly, shaking his head. "No money. I don't want money. I saw the news about the scholarship, about Mom." He looked up, tears brimming in his eyes. "Mom would have loved that." "She would have," I said coldly. "She also would have been heartbroken to see what her son became." Jamal let out a sob. He slid down the wall until he was crouching on the pavement. "I lost everything, Dad. Brittany, she's gone. She blamed me for everything in her statement. She said I forced her. She said I was the mastermind." "I read the report," I said. "I know she's lying, but I also know you're weak. You let her steer the ship, Jamal, but you were the one holding the wheel." "I was scared," he whispered. "I'm still scared. Volkov, his guys are still out there. They know I'm out. I'm sleeping in shelters, Dad. I'm eating out of garbage cans. I'm terrified." "Good," I said. "Fear keeps you alert." He looked up at me, desperation etched into every line of his face. "Please, I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for the house. Just give me a job. Any job. I'll sweep the floors. I'll wash the trucks. I'll clean the toilets. Just give me somewhere to be safe. Give me a chance to earn my way back." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had forged my name, who had let his wife abuse me, who had tried to rob me. I saw the sincerity in his eyes now, but I also knew that desperation often masquerades as repentance. "You want a job?" I asked. "Yes," he begged. "Anything, please." "King Logistics is hiring," I said. "We need sanitation workers for the depot in Alabama. It's minimum wage, 12-hour shifts. You scrub the diesel tanks. It's hot, it's dirty, and it smells like rot." Jamal didn't flinch. "I'll take it. I'll go tonight." I shook my head. "I'm not giving it to you, Jamal. You have to apply. You have to go to the office, fill out the form, pass the drug test, and interview with the manager. And if they hire you, and that's a big if. Considering your record, you will be treated like every other employee. No special favors. No Mr. King's son. You mess up once, you're fired. You steal a paperclip, you're fired. You late 1 minute, you're fired." Jamal stood up slowly. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw a flicker of something real in his eyes. Not greed, not entitlement, gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet," I said, turning back to the door. "Survive the first week, then we'll see." I put my hand on the door handle, then paused. I didn't look back at him. "And Jamal," I said, "stay away from Leo. Until you can look yourself in the mirror without flinching, you aren't fit to be around him." "I know," he said softly. Tell him I'm trying." I opened the door and walked back into the warmth and light of the ballroom. The music washed over me, cleansing the stench of the alley from my senses. I saw Henderson waiting for me, a question in his eyes. "Is he gone?" Henderson asked. "For now," I said. I walked over to the table where Leo was sitting. He was wearing a little tuxedo looking like a prince. He was laughing at a magic trick Sarah was showing him with a coin. He looked happy. He looked safe. I sat down next to him. He climbed into my lap and rested his head on my chest. "Grandpa," he said sleepily. "Is Daddy coming?" I stroked his hair, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine. "Not tonight, Leo," I said softly. "Daddy has a lot of work to do. He has a long road to walk." "Okay," Leo said, yawning. "As long as you're here." "I'm here," I promised. "I'm not going anywhere." I looked out at the room, at the people celebrating at the future I was building. I had cut off the dead limb and it hurt. It hurt like hell. But the tree was still standing. The roots were deep. And for the first time in a long time, I knew we were going to grow. I stood in the damp alleyway, the distant sound of jazz music filtering through the heavy steel door behind me. My son stood before me, shivering in his hooded sweatshirt, looking like a ghost of the man he used to pretend to be. He was clutching the application form I had told him about, holding it like it was a winning lottery ticket. He thought the conversation was over. He thought he had won a small victory. He thought he was going to stay in Atlanta, work a dirty job for a few months, and then worm his way back into my good graces. He was wrong. I reached into the inside pocket of my tuxedo jacket. My fingers brushed against the silk lining, finding the envelope I had prepared earlier that afternoon. It was thin. It was light. But it carried the weight of a lifetime of disappointment. I pulled it out. Jamal saw the movement. His eyes darted to the envelope. I saw the flash of hope in his face. He thought it was a check. He thought it was cash. He thought Daddy was coming to the rescue one last time. That instinct, that expectation of a handout, it was hardwired into his DNA now. And that was exactly what I had to kill. I held the envelope out to him. "Take it," I said. Jamal reached out his hand, shaking. He took the envelope. He tore it open, his fingers fumbling in the cold air. He pulled out the contents. It was not a check. It was two things: a single crisp $100 bill and a Greyhound bus ticket. He stared at the ticket. He squinted in the dim light of the security lamp. "Birmingham," he whispered. This is for a bus to Birmingham, Alabama. Leaving tonight at midnight." "That is right," I said. He looked up at me, confusion warring with panic on his face. "But you said the job was in Alabama. I thought you would fly me there, or lend me the car, or give me enough to get an apartment." I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that echoed off the brick walls. "I am not your travel agent, Jamal, and I am not your bank." I took a step closer to him. I wanted him to see my face. I wanted him to see the scar on my cheek where the skin was still pink and tender. "You do not get it, do you?" I said, my voice dropping to a low rumble. "You think this is just a punishment. You think this is a timeout. You think you can do a little time in the penalty box and then come back to the game." I pointed to my cheek. "You watched your wife throw boiling soup in my face, Jamal. You watched it hit me. You watched me burn. And you said she was right." Jamal flinched, looking down at his shoes. "Dad, I told you I was scared. I do not care," I roared. My voice cracked with the sheer force of the pain I had been holding back. "I can forgive a stranger for hurting me," I said. "I can forgive a business rival for cheating me. I can forgive a thief for robbing me. That is the world. The world is hard. But you are my blood. You are the son I prayed for." I took a breath, steadying myself. When that soup hit me, Jamal, it didn't just burn my skin. It didn't just blister my face. It burned through everything. It burned through the memories of teaching you to ride a bike. It burned through the pride I felt when you graduated. It burned through the love I had for you. I poked him hard in the chest. It burned away the fatherhood, Jamal. It turned it to ash. I look at you, and I do not see my son anymore. I see a man who stood by and watched his father suffer. And that is something I cannot fix. That is something I cannot forgive. Not today. Maybe not ever. Jamal was crying now, silent tears tracking through the dirt on his face. "So you are sending me away," he whispered. "Like a dog." "No," I said. "I am sending you away like a man starting from zero." I gestured to the $100 bill in his hand. "That is seed money, Jamal. That is more than I had when I started King Logistics. I had $50 and a tank of gas. You have $100 and a bus ticket. You are already twice as rich as I was." "But I don't know anyone in Birmingham," he pleaded. "I don't have a place to sleep. I don't have clothes." "Then you better figure it out," I said. "That is what men do. They figure it out. You use that $100 to buy a sandwich and a cheap coat. You sleep in the bus station until your shift starts. You wash your face in the bathroom sink. You eat rice and beans. You survive. I looked him dead in the eye. Go away, Jamal. Get on that bus. Go to Alabama. Do the job. Scrub the tanks. Breathe in the fumes. Feel the ache in your back. Learn what it feels like to earn $1 instead of begging for one. And then I delivered the final verdict, the terms of his exile. Do not call me, I said. Do not write me. Do not show up at my door. If you show your face in Atlanta before I say so, I will have you arrested for trespassing. I mean it, Jamal. If I see you, I will put you in a cell myself. Jamal's shoulders slumped. The reality was setting in. The weight of the world was finally resting on his own back, and it was crushing him. How long, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. How long do I have to stay away? 5 years, I said. He gasped. 5 years. Dad, Leo will be 10. I will miss everything. You missed everything when you chose Brittany over me, I said coldly. You missed everything when you picked up that knife. 5 years is a mercy, Jamal. Prison would be 20. I adjusted my cufflinks, preparing to leave. If, I said, raising a finger, if you stay there, if you work every day, if you keep your nose clean, if you pay your taxes, if you become a decent human being, if I hear reports that you are helping others instead of using them. I paused, letting the condition sink in. Then in 5 years, maybe I will send for you. Maybe. And if I do, I will give you something. Money, he asked, a flicker of the old greed lighting up his eyes for a second. I shook my head, disgusted. No, I said. Not money. Never money. You lost your inheritance, Jamal. That is gone. It belongs to the foundation now. It belongs to Leo. You will never see a dime of my fortune. You will live on what you earn. Then what, he asked, confused. I will leave you a photograph, I said. A photograph of me. So you can show people that you once had a father who was a king. So you can remember what you lost. And if you are very, very lucky, maybe that photograph will have a note on the back that says, I forgive you. Jamal stared at me. He looked at the $100. He looked at the ticket. He realized then that I wasn't negotiating. I wasn't bluffing. This was the new law. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He stood up a little straighter. It wasn't dignity yet, but it was the start of something. It was resignation. Okay, he whispered. Okay. He put the money and the ticket in his pocket. He zipped up his dirty hoodie. Can I say goodbye to Leo? He asked. No, I said immediately. Leo is happy. Leo is safe. He doesn't need to see you like this. He doesn't need to see a man who is running away. You earn the right to see him, Jamal. You become a father he can be proud of, and then you can see him. Until then, you are a stranger. Jamal nodded. He swallowed hard. Goodbye, Mr. King, he said. He didn't call me Dad. Good. He was learning. Goodbye, Jamal, I said. He turned and walked down the alleyway toward the street. He walked with his head down his shoulders, hunched against the wind. I watched him go. I watched him until he turned the corner and disappeared into the night. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where my son used to be. The wind was cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt empty. I felt hollowed out. It is a terrible thing to break your own child, to shatter them so completely that they have to rebuild themselves from dust. But a broken bone that heals wrong has to be rebroken to heal right. Jamal had healed wrong. He had grown crooked, twisted by entitlement and greed. I had to break him to save him. I reached up and touched the scar on my face. It didn't hurt anymore. It was just a reminder, a map of where we had been. I took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of rain and city grit. It is done, I whispered to myself. I turned back to the heavy steel door. I opened it, and the warmth of the ballroom spilled out. The jazz music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. Inside, there was a party. Inside, there was a future. Inside, my grandson was waiting for me. I walked back into the light, leaving the darkness of the alley behind. I had a speech to finish. I had a foundation to run. And I had a little boy to raise. I was Otis King, and I had work to do. The fire in the hearth crackled, popping with the dry heat of seasoned oak. It was a sound I had come to love, a sound of stability of home. I sat in the large leather wingback chair, my legs stretched out toward the warmth, a book resting forgotten on my lap. On the rug in front of me, Leo was building a castle out of wooden blocks. He was humming a little tune, the same jazz melody the band had played at the gala 6 months ago. He was safe. He was happy. And for the first time in 5 years, so was I. We weren't living in the penthouse anymore. That was a fortress, a command center for a war that was now over. We were back in the colonial house, but it was different now. I had gutted the inside. I had torn out the marble countertops Brittany had demanded, the chandeliers Jamal had bought, on credit the carpets that smelled of their pretension. I had stripped it back to the studs and rebuilt it. It was simpler now. Warmer. It looked like a home, not a showroom. Earlier that afternoon, we had been out in the backyard. I was 72 years old, worth $20 million, and I had spent 3 hours on my knees in the dirt teaching a 5-year-old how to plant collard greens. Grandpa Leo had asked, wiping a streak of dark soil across his forehead, "Why do we have to grow the food? Can't we just go to the store? You have the black card." I had laughed, the sound rumbling deep in my chest. "We have the card, Leo," I had said, handing him a trowel. "But the card doesn't make the food taste good. Sweat makes the food taste good. Patience makes it taste good. When you buy a tomato, you are just eating. When you grow a tomato, you are creating." He had nodded, taking the trowel seriously. He didn't complain about the dirt under his fingernails. He didn't whine about the heat. He just worked. He was already twice the man his father was. After the garden, we had gone to the garage. I had bought him a bicycle, a classic red Schwinn, not one of those electric ones that drive themselves. The chain had popped off. Instead of calling a mechanic, instead of throwing it away and buying a new one, I flipped it over. "Get the grease gun, Leo," I had said. We got our hands dirty. I showed him how the gears worked, how the tension held the chain, how to listen to the machine. When we were done, he rode it down the driveway, his face beaming with a pride that you can't buy at a toy store. Now, sitting by the fire watching him play, I realized that this was the real inheritance. The money was just a tool. The real legacy was the grease on his hands, the dirt on his knees, the knowledge that he could fix what was broken. I touched the scar on my cheek. It had faded to a thin silver line, a map of the territory I had crossed to get here. It didn't hurt anymore. It was just a part of me, like the calluses on my hands or the gray in my beard. It had been 6 months since I put Jamal on that bus. 6 months of silence. Henderson told me that Jamal had made it to Birmingham. He told me that Jamal had shown up at the depot the next morning looking like a wreck, but holding the application. He told me that the foreman, a man who didn't care about last names, had put a mop in his hand and told him to get to work. Henderson got weekly reports. Jamal was living in a boarding house. He was working double shifts. He had lost 20 pounds. He was tired. He was lonely. But he hadn't quit. And he hadn't called. I thought about him every day. It is a phantom pain, like losing a limb. You reach for it, and it isn't there. I missed the idea of my son. I missed the potential of what we could have been, but I didn't miss the man he had become. I realized that night, sitting in the quiet, that what I had done wasn't punishment, it was surgery. Jamal and Brittany, they were a tumor, a malignant growth that had attached itself to the family spine, feeding off the marrow, growing fat while the host withered. I had tried to treat it with medicine, with kindness, with money. But you can't medicate cancer. You have to cut it out. The surgery was brutal. There was blood. There was trauma. There was a scar that would never fully heal. But the patient had survived. The family was alive. Leo was thriving. And I was breathing free air. Cutting them off was the only way to save the body. If I had let them stay, they would have killed me. Not with a knife maybe, but with stress, with heartbreak, with the slow erosion of my soul. And they would have destroyed Leo. They would have turned him into another version of themselves, entitled, weak, and cruel. I saved him. And in doing so, I saved myself. The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. Leo looked up from his blocks. "Grandpa," he said, "look, I built a fortress." I leaned forward. "It is a strong fortress, Leo. Does it have a gate?" "No," Leo said, shaking his head. "No gate. So the bad guys can't get in." I smiled a sad, knowing smile. That is smart, son. Sometimes you have to keep the gate closed. The room was peaceful, filled with the heavy, comfortable silence of two people who feel safe with each other. Then the phone rang. It wasn't the landline. It was my personal cell phone sitting on the side table next to my reading glasses. The sound was jarring, an intrusion from the outside world. I picked it up. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number, but the area code, 205, Birmingham, Alabama. I stared at the numbers. My heart did a strange double beat. It was him. It had to be him. It was Christmas Eve. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he wanted to hear my voice. Maybe he wanted to beg to come home. Or maybe he just wanted to say, Merry Christmas. My thumb hovered over the green button. I could answer. I could hear his voice. I could ask him if he was eating, if he was warm. I could send him money. I could send a car. I could end his exile right now with one word. I looked at Leo. He was watching me, his eyes wide and curious. He knew who lived in the silence. He knew who was missing. If I answered, if I let Jamal back in before he was ready, before the 5 years were up, I would be undoing everything. I would be teaching him that consequences aren't real. I would be teaching him that if you wait long enough, the old man will crack. And I would be teaching Leo that boundaries are just suggestions. Jamal was working. He was surviving. He was becoming a man. If I answered that phone, I would be taking that away from him. I would be turning him back into a child. The phone kept ringing. It felt heavy in my hand, like the knife had felt heavy in his. I looked at the scar in the reflection of the dark window. I remembered the soup. I remembered the courtroom. I remembered the betrayal. I wasn't angry anymore, but I was resolved. Respect is not a currency you can counterfeit, and dignity is not a garment you can strip away from a man who built his empire from the dirt up. We spend our lives building shelters for our children, hoping to shield them from the storm, only to realize some storms are created by the very people we protect. Cutting off a toxic branch, even if it shares your blood, is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. A legacy isn't about the money you leave behind, but the values you refused to compromise even when the hot soup of betrayal burned your face. I pressed the red button. The ringing stopped. The screen went black. I put the phone back on the table, face down. Who was that Grandpa? Leo asked, innocent and soft. I looked at my grandson. I looked at the future. Just a wrong number, Leo, I said. Just a ghost from the past. I stood up and walked over to the rug. I sat down next to him, my knees cracking a little. Show me this fortress, I said. Let us make sure the walls are strong. We built together in the light of the fire. The wind howled outside, trying to get in, but the house was solid. The doors were locked. The bad guys were gone. And for the first time in a long time, the king was truly on his throne. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about standing your ground when the world tries to knock you down, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share these stories with people who need to hear them. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had to make a tough choice to save your peace? I read every single one. Until next time, stay strong, stay sharp, and never let anyone take your crown.